Disclaimer. The contents of Studio 151 podcast do not represent the views and beliefs of the TU Media Lab or the University of Tulsa.
Welcome to the BallsTalkSports NFL podcast, Pro Bowl Spectacular. Me and Victor have our 2024 season Pro Bowl picks, and we are going to objectively tell you who the best players in the NFL are.
Yeah, this should be an exciting one, man. Every year you look at the Pro Bowl and you're just like, this is not right.
These guys don't know ball.
These are not the best players in football, and it's not even the fans' fault because they only account for 50% of the vote. It's the analysts' fault too. They look at big names. They don't look at stats. They don't watch the games. They just want the big names. They want the brands there. Well, we don't care about the brands. Obviously, we don't care about the brand because the BallsTalkSports brand is about not caring about the brand. So, you're about to see some deep cuts.
We are the brand.
We are the brand. We are the best football podcast out there, except for the podcasts that are better than us, which are, namely, nobody.
Exactly. We are the top knowers of ball in the business. Are you ready to start things off with the quarterbacks?
I am. Let's get kinky.
All right, it's that time. Did you want to start with the NFC or the AFC?
I say we start with the AFC. I don't know why I always just think of the AFC for if you're starting with something, you start with the AFC, you end with the NFC. You know what I mean?
So you're a Broncos fan.
Of course.
I'm a Packers fan, and I think of it the opposite way.
Well, that explains
NFC superiority.
That explains it. All right, AFC quarterbacks, though. I think we have the same three, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Who is your number one?
It's Jackson.
Okay, I have Josh Allen.
That's fair, and it was
number
close.
One. Exactly. The reason that I went with Allen over Jackson is I think if you eliminate Allen from that Bills offense, I think it's going to be a steeper drop-off than removing Lamar Jackson from the Ravens offense. However, both of these are superhuman type of quarterbacks that do things that we've never seen before on a weekly basis. Josh Allen, it's not just the arm talent and what he does on the ground, which is continually underrated in the play extension, but he's really cut down on the turnovers this year, and probably my favorite part of his game, and this goes along with the play extension, the dude is unsackable because he is faster than you, and he is bigger than you, and he is meaner than you. 9.1 pressure to sack ratio is by far the best in the NFL.
That's insane. He also just wants it more than you do. I mean, he's throwing guys off of him. Yeah, Josh Allen's just a freak. I ultimately went with Lamar because, you know what? I agree. You take Allen off of that Bills offense, it is worse than if you take Jackson off of the Ravens offense. But we're talking about just the best player. I think Lamar's just been a little bit better. The 29-3 touchdown interception ratio is just bonkers. That's like Aaron Rodgers stuff. People saying he's a running back. He is a pure pocket passer if he wants to be. First in total EPA on the season and first in EPA per drop back. He's also got near 700 rushing yards on the season. Statistically, it checks out. You watch the eye test, it checks out. He's been dead on accurate. Deep ball, intermediate, short ball. He's escaped the pocket well. He's made good decisions. When it collapses, he can make stuff work. When it's working as it should, he can run the offense perfectly. So I really like Jackson, and I really like Allen, too. Both have been great. Both of the teams are doing great. Ultimately, I think this offense in Baltimore is actually not as good as some people say it is outside of Lamar, so I think we got to give him a lot of credit this year. And I think these are the two MVP front runners right now.
I would certainly say so. I do quite strongly factor in surrounding situation when I'm making these picks, and Baltimore has a really good run game, but how much of that is because of what Lamar Jackson brings? He's got 35 missed tackles forced on the season. That is head and shoulders number one among quarterbacks.
That's so insane. And then you also got to the Josh Allen side. You got to factor in this surrounding cast isn't great on paper, and then look at all the times that these guys have been injured this year, man. Keon Coleman, I mean, he's been off and on this year, and he's also been injured. Kincaid and Knox have both had their bouts of injury. Amari Cooper hasn't been there the entire time. And Buffalo's been dealing with a lot of stuff this year, so it's impressive what both of these guys have done through adversity this year, and they both deserve to be Pro Bowlers, no doubt about it.
It's very much a pick your flavor type
Absolutely.
of discussion. All right, so the number 3 quarterback, you have Will Levis, right?
Of course. I mean, he's a BallsTalkSports Pro Bowler in our heart. You know what I mean?
In our heart. In reality, I've got Joe Burrow.
Yeah, so do I.
Yep. The conversation with Joe Burrow, I think people overcomplicate it a little bit more than you need to because they look at the win-loss record. And I read an article, and I think it was The Athletic, and it was talking about, is Joe Burrow clutch? Here are the numbers. And basically the consensus is yes, he scores on that end-of-game situation that we need a touchdown, drive down the field situation at an extremely high clip, one of the highest clips of all time. And what are the comments saying? Yeah, but he plays from shotgun and does it too fast. If that's your complaint about your quarterback is that he scores what should be the game-winning touchdown too quickly, you are living in a very good place. He's been the most productive quarterback of the season, 34 touchdowns, and when the Bengals are playing from behind, he does become a superhero. .21 trailing EPA per play is the best mark in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow's insane, and he's doing all this, and the reason that win-loss record is so bad is because he does it. He's like, okay, I score. We're down 4, right? I score a touchdown with 20 seconds left, and the defense, they let him get a field goal, goes to overtime, and the other team wins because Joe Burrow is not a perfect player. He can't, even if he was perfect, they'd still probably be 500. So Burrow's had just an unreal season. First in passing yards in the league, 34-6 touchdown interception ratio. What he's doing is just, it's insane. I think he'd be the MVP front runner if this team was 10-4. So it's a shame that we're wasting probably Burrow's best year on this defense, but he absolutely deserves to be a Pro Bowler. The only other guy you can really make an argument for is it's Mahomes, and even then, right? Like, he's been a lot better these past few weeks. He's been diming up, but there have been a lot of issues with his game this year, and he's still been Mahomes. He's still been great, but Burrow, Allen, and Jackson deserved it more, and I think these are the no-brainer 3 for the Pro Bowl.
With Joe Burrow, obviously playing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is going to do a lot for your efficiency, but the thing is, that's really the only thing he has going for him. Chase Brown fantasy owners might not understand how inconsistent and undependable this run game can be. His group of secondary pass catchers isn't anything special, and the game plan from Zach Taylor is essentially, hey, Joe Burrow, go out there and just read the defense and win us the game, please. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, so they do put a ton on his plate. Patrick Mahomes would be kind of an alternate for me. He would have made the Pro Bowl if he played in the NFC. This is another extremely unique conversation because he does not have conventional Pro Bowl numbers. However, 7 game-winning drives, next highest is 4, and that is real. But that is Patrick Mahomes being automatic in game-winning drive situations.
You watch the games, he's just doing it every time.
At some point, well, it just feels inevitable. It's not luck anymore. It's not variance. It's what he does. And 40.1 third down EPA on the season is ludicrously high, number one by a mile. I do want to give a quick shout out to Justin Herbert. Yeah. He has been balling down the stretch. If we did this in 3-4 weeks, I really think he would have a chance. He doesn't have the sheer production, the numbers, but he's really well protected on the corners. We'll get to that in a moment, but they've had a lot of interior pressure that he's had to escape away from. He doesn't have the most talented roster, and 1 interception is the best mark in the league right now. He's playing excellent, but just doesn't have the sheer volume. Are you ready to move to the NFC?
Yeah, I forgot about Herbert. That's a good shout. Definitely deserves to be considered. But yeah, the NFC quarterbacks. This is where the conversation actually begins, because I doubt we have the same 3.
Who's your number 1?
Goff.
He squeaked in for me.
Yeah, I mean,
he was my 3rd.
He wouldn't make the AFC Pro Bowl.
No. Oh, absolutely not.
Nobody would. I mean, I think the 5 guys we just talked about are all number 1 quarterback in the NFC. It's just a different conversation here. But ultimately, when you look at what Goff's done statistically this season and what he's been put on the tape, it's just better than everybody else. And you can talk about the system around him all you want, but ultimately what matters is, are you converting those into wins? Are you converting those into good stats? And are you converting those into good plays? And Goff has done all 3 of those things except for his game against the Texans. So I think this, again, he's not making it in the AFC, but this is the NFC. This is a different situation. I think what Goff has shown earned him the number 1 QB spot.
He's been efficient. He's been clutch. 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, second best in the league behind, you guessed it, Patrick Mahomes. He has some of the volume numbers. My big hang-up with Jared Goff is he just doesn't really make big throws downfield. Everything is perfect for him. And for the most part, again, outside of maybe that one game, and he had a little bit of a slow start to the season, he absolutely gets the most out of it, and that record speaks for itself. He still made it in for me. However, my number 1 quarterback this is factoring in the surrounding situation. That plays a big role for me, is Geno Smith.
Ooh, I love it.
Do you have Geno?
I do not have him in my Pro Bowl. He was
I didn't
fourth,
think so.
but I'm a big Geno guy. Oh, Broncos fan is a big Geno guy. Yes, I can see past. I'm a big Geno guy, and I love it. I want to hear, why is he your number one quarterback?
From a stats perspective, he probably shouldn't have made it. However, here's the big thing. He's close. He has been having a very effective season as the Seahawks quarterback. And I almost don't think, maybe beyond the last 2-3 weeks, anything has been right in that offense that makes life easier on Geno. The pass protection has been terrible. It's forced him to play in a way that he's uncomfortable with. He's a guy who wants to win with his arm downfield, and instead he's had to become a check down merchant. He's had to run for his life in the pocket. The play calling has been disjointed. They've had a horrifically unreliable run game. And this is another guy where the game plan is just drop back 45 times a game, no play action, no motion, and win it for us.
It is.
I feel that he's truly risen to the occasion.
Definitely. I mean, it's been a tough situation. You look at the roster at first glance. It's like, this is a pretty solid roster, but you got to take into account 3 weeks ago this thing was decimated. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas both out. You know what I mean? Christian Haynes starting in the interior, and he's been inconsistent at best. You got Olu Atimi starting in center. It's just the offensive line's been a disaster. The running game has been basically non-existent because they've shown a refusal to run it, and when they have, it just hasn't worked. And the receivers have been relatively inconsistent. JSN's had his great weeks. He's had his bad weeks. DK Metcalf he's DK Metcalf, so he's been making this team work. The fact that they're 8-5 is a reflection of Geno Smith. It's not a reflection of anybody else. Maybe it's a reflection of the defense has slowly been improving, but that's also been tough. You know, this defense has given them nothing. Not as nothing as the Bengals defense has been giving Burrow, but damn near, honestly. Geno Smith has played the hero act this year, and he's done it well. So he deserves that shout, and I like the call.
I like that you bring up the receiving room as potentially one of the things limiting Geno this season. When people see DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, and again, I think this conversation has shifted because JSN has really turned it on over the last 4 to 5 weeks. But early on in the year, it was a badly inconsistent group. When people think about Geno, they think about the turnovers. However, when you factor in the plays that just aren't his fault, when he's throwing to places where he expects DK Metcalf or JSN to be, you wind up with a 2.1% turnover-worthy play rate, tied for 8th best in the league.
Yeah, that's the thing. When things are working right, he looks great, but the thing is, things aren't working right a lot. So he's got to throw guys open. He's got to play the hero ball. You know what I mean? So I don't think you can put all this on him. He's been sacked 40 times this year, you know, but he's still throwing 70% completion rate, 3,500 yards on the season. He's had to throw the ball more than anybody this year. It's not a great situation, and he's still looking the part. So, and it's just impressive what he's done, especially when you consider the fact that he was not his career was dead 2 years ago. I love Geno as a Pro Bowler. I'm disappointed I couldn't sneak him in because I felt like the other two guys after Goff deserved it a little bit more than him, but he definitely deserves at least a mention and a spot in 10 years.
So Goff is your 1, Geno is your 4. Who's your second quarterback?
Stafford.
I get it. I like it. I'm a big Stafford guy. Honestly, I think his case is very similar to Geno's.
It is, because when you look at it, it's again like this. You look at the roster right now, and well, this is a solid roster. He played half the season without Cooper Kupp and without Puka Nacua, and we know how good those guys are. And you know what? You compare his stats to Geno, and honestly, it looks better. I mean, he's got 19 touchdowns on the season, only throwing 7 picks on the season. He's got a positive EPA, which is impressive. And the line's been decimated too. But it's not just statistics with Stafford. We throw statistics because they're a good way to reconcile how good they are on the field in just a couple of seconds. But you watch Stafford, and these throws that he makes are just insane. And it's like you don't understand how you could possibly fit that ball into that window, but it's also he just doesn't put the ball in harm's way as much as he even used to. But especially when you're playing with guys like Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, who have had good seasons, you got to credit them for, but they're not Cooper Kupp, they're not Puka Nacua. When you're playing with guys like that, you've got to throw people open, and there's nobody better in the league. There's only a couple people better in the league than Matthew Stafford at throwing people open. He is He has an arm that can hit anywhere in the field at any time, and he's shown it this year. He's really carried this team. This team could have easily been dead and gone that midway through the season if they had just lost a couple, but they fought, and they're in the NFC West race because Matthew Stafford has pulled them. He's fought tooth and nail throughout this season, taken hits, made plays to get them wins. He deserves a spot in the Pro Bowl.
You talked about how unhealthy this offensive line has been after we expected it to be a strength coming into the year. Well, they're pretty much fully healthy for the first time last week against the Bills, and maybe this is unpopular, but I thought that the offense actually looked pretty good against Buffalo.
I mean, not bad.
And that's a reflection of Stafford and his arm talent, so I completely get it. The reason I left him out is it feels like there are 2 to 3 throws a game where maybe defenses haven't punished him for bad decisions
That's
or
fair.
the ball sailing because he's under pressure. I feel like he's lost some of that pocket mobility and he's lost fumbles a couple of times. So it is the amount of turnover-worthy plays, but it's close. I really wanted to fit him in.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know what? Those turnover-worthy plays are just something you're always going to have to live with Stafford. He's going to sling it. Most of the time, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a spectacle. Sometimes it's going to be a bad decision. Sometimes it's going to hit the hands of a receiver and, well, of a corner, and, well, maybe it's going to be picked. Maybe it's going to be dropped. You hope it's going to be dropped. And he's had a few more dropped interceptions. He's had a few more plays that DBs could have made, but they didn't break on the ball soon enough than you want to see this year. But I'm willing to give him some leeway because of how this offense has been operating and how much they're asking of him.
And it helps when you throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball.
It definitely does.
And half of the cornerbacks in the league can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of his game. I mean, he's throwing these heaters. He's hurting his receivers' hands. These corners aren't used to those balls. He knows he can get away with something.
Absolutely. Now, your number 3 quarterback is Jaden Daniels.
It is not.
Wow.
I've got a take about Jaden Daniels, okay? Is your number 3 Jaden Daniels?
He is.
Okay, I love Jaden Daniels. I think he's been really good. He's been the best rookie quarterback this year, and I'm a Bo Nix guy. I don't think he should be Rookie of the Year.
Who do you think is Rookie of the
Brock
Year?
Bowers.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
It shouldn't be a QB award. I think we're
Not by default.
It's not the most valuable rookie. It's the best rookie, and the best rookie's been Brock Bowers. And now going on to Jaden Daniels, I think he's been really good. The front half of the season was a lot better than the back half. You know what I mean? And I don't want to attribute that all to him. I'm actually not going to attribute most of it to him. I'm going to attribute it to Cliff Kingsbury doing Cliff Kingsbury things and having a very good offense off rip, but then just not adjusting to what defenses are throwing at him and putting Daniels in bad positions to succeed. But it's also Daniels. Their teams are kind of figuring out the ways in which that he's not necessarily the best. You know, if we can get this certain type of pressure, if we could disguise coverages, very complicated, sometimes he's going to have a tougher time. He's still not going to put the ball in harm's way. When you disguise coverages against rookie quarterbacks and they still have a low turnover-worthy play percentage, that is really good. It's a really good sign, but he's not making those big plays as much anymore. They're still there, of course. I'm not saying that he was fifth,
Yeah, I think that would be 5th. Because you said Geno was 4th.
Yeah, no, he was 5th on my list, and it was really close between all of these guys. It was just a toss-up. I made my mind up at the last second, but Daniels has been a little bit more inconsistent. He hasn't gotten as many big plays. Washington's losing a little bit more. It was just enough to kick him off my list.
I do get it, but there are really 2 things about Daniels for me, or I should say 2 aspects that made him a Pro Bowler, and one of them is just how complete his skill set is. I mean, he's a rookie, and it's already, look at what he can't do. It's almost non-existent. He runs an extremely high completion percentage type of offense, which I think has value. It's not just looking at the completion percentage, it's being consistently accurate, and he's really impressed me with his ability to play within rhythm. Like you mentioned, he does not turn the ball over. He's been a lethal play extender outside the pocket, and he's been deadly with his legs, 408 scramble yards, tops in the league. When you look at for a weak spot in his game, statistically it's been the deep ball, the deep passing game. And we all know that Jaden Daniels does not have some non-existent deep ball, so that's what did it for me. However, it's also the surrounding situation. I think we forget, since this Washington team is in wild card position, competing for a playoff spot, how bad they were expected to be heading into the year. Okay, you've got Terry McLaurin. Who's your number 2 pass catcher? Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler.
Ertz has been better than we thought he would be this season, but still, he's not a number 2 at this point.
He's not a Pro Bowl honorable mention for me.
No, he's not. He wasn't. He didn't make my list.
I think that Daniels has so handily raised the floor of this Commanders offense. I don't think that they would be in playoff position without him, so that's why he made it.
I agree. Daniels absolutely deserves a mention, and he absolutely deserves props. And you know what? When we make our final official BallsTalkSports Pro Bowl roster and we put it up on the Instagram, and I think I'll probably give it to you, and I'll let Daniels be on there. But my guy, I just wanted to give respect to what he's been doing this year. I think at his peak, he's been playing just as well as all of these guys. And I think he's another guy. We expected this team to be bad. We expected them to be middle of the road to bad. And I think he's raised the floor. So my third and final Pro Bowl quarterback is Sam Darnold.
I get it. Oh, my God. He's got a golden arm. It looks like the USC tape most of the time.
Yeah, and if this is 4 weeks ago, I don't think he makes it. But he's put together the best stretch of his career over the past 3 or 4 weeks. And including that first 3 or 4 weeks when he was an MVP candidate. So I'm just really impressed with what Darnold's done. Though that athleticism, that arm that we all thought was just going to be incredible coming out of USC is there. He's thrown 28 touchdowns this year, and it's not just a factor that he has Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. That helps. He's got a better surrounding situation than Jaden Daniels does, and that absolutely matters. But I think you can only factor in surrounding situations to a point because bad quarterbacks can't take advantage of good surrounding situations. Average quarterbacks make good surrounding situations a little bit worse. I think Sam Darnold's made this surrounding situation better than what it would be in a vacuum. So I think he's made Justin Jefferson look better than he has in any other year. Honestly, with Kirk Cousins, I think Sam Darnold's the best quarterback that the Vikings have had since the Kirk Cousins era, including the Kirk Cousins era. You know what I mean? So I really like what he's done, and I really like how he's struggled through adversity. He's had his bad games, and he's just picked it right back up. And the Vikings are 11-2 for a reason, or they're 11-2, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, they're 11-2 for a reason. I don't think they'd be near there without Sam Darnold. If they started J.J. McCarthy and he looked about how we expected J.J. McCarthy to, I think this team would be around 500. So it's just been so impressive.
Completely get it. He was number 4 on my list. The downfield throws are spectacular. He's been top 5 in the NFL in terms of nailing the go ball. The thing for me that separated some of the other quarterbacks on my list from Darnold is just, maybe this is unfair, I can't fully trust him. This is almost a perfect surrounding situation. It's not entirely perfect, don't get me wrong. They definitely allow some pressure along the interior, and he does a very effective job mitigating it, but great play calling, excellent perimeter wideouts. You've got TJ Hawkinson back now, who I think has played a very meaningful role in his increased consistency. Great play in the tackle room, a good run game, and excellent defense. It's just almost everything is perfect. This is a 9 out of 10 situation, and there's still a part of me that says if you put him on the 18th best roster in the NFL, I have concerns about whether or not he's going to look like Carson Wentz.
I do too, but ultimately I do. He is on this roster. He is. You can't change your situation mid-season, so I want to reward you for playing well, even if you do have a more advantageous situation. But like I said, him and Daniels and Smith, like the gap is minuscule. I think Goff and Stafford were not clear, but they were a notch above all 3 of these guys. And there's actually a 4th guy in this tier, Kyler Murray, which we didn't get to, but I think he's been there. I like how you know what you talked about this offensive line a little bit. It's not just the interior as well. Cam Robinson's been shaky at best from the left tackle position, and they're missing Christian Darrisaw. That's a big loss. You lose an all-pro level tackle in Christian Darrisaw, and you know what? Darnold's been able to maneuver in the pocket pretty. That's been the accuracy has been his biggest improvement. Just improving how just a consistently accurate arm has been the most impressive thing. But the second most impressive is just. He just feels a lot more comfortable in the pocket. It's clear. He's just maneuvering it well. There's so many times where you're just like, you look at Sam Darnold and the Jets, he's not stepping up. He's going to take that sack. Hell, he might rip it, and he might try to rip it, and it's going to be a fumble 6. No, he steps up. He's calm. He looks nice, and it helps that he has that surrounding situation that He's got that safety now. He knows that if I throw it to this guy, he's going to catch it. And that really helps, especially for a guy like Sam Darnold. When you play for the Jets and you know that if you throw it, it's going to fall off of your receiver's hands and into the DB's hands for a pick six. So that situation helps.
I've seen the same thing. I do think that the pocket presence is the biggest difference between Panthers, Jets, Sam Darnold, and the version we're getting now, and I think that improvement is very real.
But the NFC quarterback situation, it's kind of messy. It's when I looked at this for the first time, I was like, oh God, this is going to be difficult to parse through. But I'm happy with my choices. I think your choices are very good. So there's a lot of tier 2, tier 3 NFC quarterbacks. I don't think we have a tier 1 though.
I would agree with that. You ready to move on to the running backs?
Absolutely.
All right, so do you want to kind of do this in snake format and start with the NFC, or just go AFC, NFC for each one?
I like snake.
All right, so we'll start with the NFC. And Victor, who is your number 1 running back in the National Football Conference?
I don't know. I think he goes by the name of Saquon Barkley, the man who is on pace to break Eric Dickerson's yardage record.
Is he on my? Yes, he is number 1 by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, there's no running back better right now.
There's nothing he can't do, I think, is the biggest thing. He impacts the receiving game. He's an extremely explosive runner. He's a high-volume runner. He makes guys miss at the second level. And he can battle between the tackles and dig out those tough yards on 3rd and 2 as well. He checks all of the boxes and then some.
I think it's so rare when you look at Saquon Barkley and what he's doing behind this offensive line. This is the best offensive line. Well, one of the best offensive line.
It's the best.
Yeah. Well, there's a
Detroit
team,
is close.
There's a team in Detroit. That would like a word about that. But I think it's the best. It's really close between them and Detroit. But you look at this, it's the best. And we'll get to that whenever we get to the NFC offensive line conversation. Spoiler, there will be a fair few Eagles and there will be a fair few Lions. But yeah, Saquon, you look at any running back behind this offensive line will do well. But there's so rare that you see a running back behind this offensive line and be like, yes, this is not the offensive line doing this. This is the running back doing this. Saquon, he's an elite athlete. We've known that for the longest time. He's going to he's going to break as many tackles as possible. He's going to make guys look stupid. He's going to put them on highlight reels. He's going to make his money. He's going to get on Twitter with some insane posts. I can't believe Saquon did this. But he's going to do the things that don't show up on the highlight reels as well. He's going to make the right read. He's going to cut inside. He's going to cut it back better than any other running back in the league. When you look at a guy who can just cut back into the hole you're going to the left and there's a hole on the right, he's going to cut back quickly. That athleticism helps, but the vision is there, and I feel like that's something progressed year over year, but especially in Philly, what they got him doing. He has just been so perfect at hitting it at the right time. The patience has been there. And then whenever he does decide to go through, he just explodes. And it's a thing of beauty. And then, the stats, they speak for themselves.
First in the NFL in rushing yards, 1623. Yeah, absolutely. For anyone who's on the running backs don't matter side of the aisle, go ahead and watch DeAndre Swift, watch Miles Sanders with the Eagles, and then watch Saquon Barkley.
I think
there's a difference.
The running backs don't matter is something that was kind of co-opted by the people who really don't understand football. But at its core, it was never running backs don't matter. It was only the elite tier of running backs matter, and then after that, they're about the same. So you don't want to pay you don't want to pay a lot of money for a tier 2, tier 3 quarterback running back when you can get a tier 4 running back in the draft for a lot cheaper. Running backs do matter. The Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, spoiler alert, Derrick Henry will be on this list, but Saquon Barkley, he matters, and there is a serious argument. We talked about 2 MVP candidates, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. If we had to narrow this down to 3, I think it's Saquon Barkley's the 3rd.
I think that's fair. What he does for the Eagles offense, it truly is unique.
Absolutely. And this is one where I really wish that there was an award that wasn't the MVP. It was just the best player in football, the Heisman, And I think when we do our end of the season awards, the Balls Talk awards show, I think that we will probably have an award. This is the Calvin Johnson Award, maybe.
There we go.
He never
the Joe Thomas Award.
Yeah, the Joe Thomas. It's the Joe Thomas Award. I like that. The Joe Thomas Award, the best player in football. Despite it doesn't have to be a quarterback. It can be a quarterback, but it won't be this year. It might be, probably not.
So after Saquon Barkley, it doesn't necessarily drop off. We're still getting excellent talent in the NFC, but it does get a little murkier. Who's your second guy?
My second guy is actually Josh Jacobs.
Mine too.
Yeah, he's been so good this year, and it's a little bit because of that reputation that he had of a guy that's just he's going to plug it forward for 3 or 4 yards, and he's not going to be too efficient. He's not going to have a high yards per carry. He's not really going to be flashy or anything. I think he's proved him wrong. He's been efficient this year. He's been consistent. He's been smart, and he hasn't lost a step in breaking tackles. It seems like he's faster this year almost. But I mean, you're a Packers fan. You've seen him play. I mean, he's number 2 on your list too. What do you think?
He's still that guy, but he's an even better version of that guy. I picked 3 stats that all kind of tell you the same thing about Josh Jacobs. 824 yards after contact is 3rd in the NFL. 58 missed tackles forced. However, he can hit you with the juke move. He did it to a Dolphins safety. I don't remember exactly who that was, but just catching the screen pass, I think he breaks an arm tackle, and then he puts a move on a guy. He can do that, but most of those forced missed tackles are just him running through people. He is a nightmare to get on the ground. In 56 rushing first downs, tied for 3rd in the league. He's been extremely dependable, and that's exactly what the Packers offense needs. And he's doing it from the gun so often, which isn't how you imagine a power back like Josh Jacobs operating. New scheme, doesn't matter. Same, if not better, player.
And that's what's been so impressive, the gun stuff. I don't understand how he's as efficient as he is. And when you watch, especially this interior offensive line for the Packers has been off and on, and Jacobs has never seen an issue at all. He has not been off and on. He's been consistent. He's been their guy. 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you give it to Josh Jacobs, and you just don't have a doubt. And when you have that easy button, it opens up so much for the pass game. And he's just been that's such a big pickup for the Packers. Then another thing you touched on, the receiving portion of the game for him, it's just been a lot better than we've ever seen.
He's a 3rd down back.
Absolutely. I mean, he's been consistent. He's been efficient. He hasn't dropped many balls, and when you look at it, he's never been the biggest pass catching guy. I think that's always just been they've never used him that way. I think he's always had this, but he's definitely kicked it up a notch under LaFleur. So I really like Josh Jacobs. I've always been a fan of Josh Jacobs too. Tulsa native, shout out. So Josh Jacobs comes in the 2nd running back slot, and after this is where I think the conversation really starts.
I stayed in the NFC North. I went with Jahmyr Gibbs because the guy is Sonic the Hedgehog. He is probably the most explosive player in the NFL. He is a human highlight reel. And the thing is, he's multifaceted too. He's not just speed. He's not, say, Devon Achane. He can beat you in a multitude of ways. He's so fast and kind of low to the earth that he effortlessly breaks arm tackles. His 20-plus yard runs are 1st in the league. The big hang-up on Jahmyr Gibbs is he's in a split-back system with a really good offensive line, but the fact is he has the production, and his efficiency is off the charts.
Yeah, Jahmyr was 4th for me. He's so good, and it was so painful to leave him off. He's a freak, man. You watch him play, and there's he's the definition of a dynamic back, and the Lions were made fun of for picking him at what, 12, was it?
I think so.
Yeah, 12 it was, and I think they've been proven right. I think he's in that tier of running backs do matter when they're named Jahmyr Gibbs. But I considered a lot of guys for this role because there's a lot of good NFC running backs. A lot of good NFC running backs that deserves this spot. You know what? I looked at Jahmyr Gibbs. I looked at Bijan Robinson. I looked at Aaron Jones. Looked at David Montgomery. I looked at Alvin Kamara, Bucky Irving. None of them were as good. None of them made as much of an impact on me than when I was watching Chuba Hubbard.
He is my 5. I get it.
He's just this Panthers offense is nowhere without Chuba Hubbard. There's been one guy who has been consistent in Carolina all year, and there's been 2 guys, Chuba Hubbard, and we'll actually get to another one. Spoiler: there is another Panther on my Pro Bowl list, but Chuba, man, he's just been so good, and I think we forget Chuba Hubbard coming out of Oklahoma State. Junior year, he was going to declare for the draft, and he was going to be a 1st-round pick or 2nd-round pick, and then he hurt his leg. I think he was an ACL or it was an Achilles maybe. He missed a year, and he declares for the draft. We hadn't seen him a year, so he gets picked in the 4th or the 5th round, and still recovering from that injury going into the year. He doesn't have the best year, and he's rebounded, but he's gotten better every single year, and it finally looks like the guy that we saw at Oklahoma State, and it looks better. He looks polished, Chuba's always been that guy that he can lower the shoulder, he can knock you out. You know what I mean? He'll give it to you. 3.2 yards after contact per attempt is very impressive, but it sounds like he's picked up another year in his elusiveness this season. He's picked up another year in his speed this season, and running behind that Panthers offensive line, it's a tough thing because a lot of guys are just going to get through really quickly. He's done a really good job at mitigating loss of yards on runs. You're just not going to see Chuba lose yards on as many runs as you think he will. I mean, his rush yards over he's what's the metric? Yeah, I mean he's averaging 1.1 rush yards over expected per attempt. That's insane. I mean, every attempt, he's getting a yard more than you're expecting him to. He's just avoiding the negative plays. He's getting a lot of positive plays. He's only lost one fumble on the year, 700 yards after contact. Like I said, he's been a freak. He's nearly 5 yards per carry too. In Carolina, he's been consistent in a year for Carolina where it seems like nothing can go right until recently. So I think he deserved the spot, and I just love what he's put on the field this season.
In the preseason, or I should say the offseason, rookie minicamp and that kind of stuff, I remember hearing something out of Carolina like, we're going to focus on running the ball. We're going to make life easy on Bryce Young in year 2. And it's like, yeah, right. We know where this is going. And for the first 2 weeks, they didn't lean on the run game, and we saw what the offense looks like. And then Andy Dalton comes in. Some of the pressure is relieved. They do establish kind of a downhill run game. Look at that offense now, hanging with Philly.
It's so impressive, and it's not the fact that Bryce Young's come back and he's helping Chuba. Chuba's helping Bryce. I don't think Bryce is as good as he is without the knowledge that they've got a run game to lie back on, and also Chuba's just been better in the receiving game this year. He's been a nice safety net. So Jahmyr Gibbs absolutely deserves a shout. Bijan Robinson was my 5. I feel like it's at least worth mentioning. He's had a really good season.
He's an alt. He would have made it in the AFC for me.
I think all 5 of those guys that we talked about would have made it in the AFC for me. The AFC picture is just a little bit worse. I think Aaron Jones might have made it in the AFC too. But Chuba, I also, Oklahoma State, a little bit of a bias there, but I think Chuba's been so good. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has been so good. The NFC running backs are just so fun to watch.
A quick end note on Bijan Robinson. I think he might be the most skilled running back in the NFL in terms of his combination of vision and awareness, knowing where the chains are, knowing how to fall forward, not fumbling the football, a complete receiving skill set. Man, things are pretty solid in Atlanta, I suppose. I mean, you're working with Tyler Algier. There's some decent maulers on the offensive line. But the run game is just so stagnant, and they expect him to win the same way every time. His efficiency is just so impressive to me in that situation.
Yeah, that's ultimately why he didn't make it. Was just it wasn't his fault. It was the system around him. They're just if he's in Detroit, he is probably number 2 on this list.
Oh yeah,
like Bijan is insane. He's been really good. If he's in Saquon's position, he's doing great things. So, people who were calling him a bust after a year, I mean, first of all, I don't know why people did in the first place, but second of all, he's looked every bit like the guy that we hoped when he got picked at 8.
I was a little bit of a Bijan is overrated guy. I still really liked him. I thought he was a future 3-down back and probably a Pro Bowler. I didn't know if I saw a dominant trait per se. I'm there with Bijan, and I'm waiting for the 1,500-yard breakout sort of season.
Yeah, last thing also, just he's been one of the best receiving backs in the league, too. Just out of the backfield, he's been lethal.
4th in scrimmage yards per game with 106. All right, now moving to the AFC. Yeah, King Henry is number 1 for me.
He's the king, man. He's just been, you hit him, you bounce off.
There's nothing you can do to stop Derrick Henry. 15 total touchdowns is first among running backs. Stacked box percentage of 31.3.
Oh.
Number 1 in the NFL. He's running into a brick wall, and he says, okay, I'll just run through it. And he's wildly efficient doing so. 5.7 yards a pop. If Saquon didn't exist, this would be like a banner first-team All-Pro season.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's almost a shame that Saquon Barkley is having the season he is for King Henry truthers like me. So, I mean, tied for first in rushing yards over expected per attempt. So, I mean, it's not just the system around him. It's not just Lamar's open up holes for him. He's still that elite running back. I mean, have we ever seen Is he gonna be this generation's Frank Gore, if that can even still exist? Like, he's the closest thing we've seen to Frank Gore recently, and he just hasn't dropped off. Maybe the athleticism is a tick below. He's compensated for it by he already had some of the best vision in football over the past 5 years, and it just seems like it's getting better. He just knows what every linebacker is going to do before they even do. He knows the scheme backwards and forwards. Whenever a guy hits him in the backfield, they are put on their ass, and he's going to keep running. He's just so talented. He's so smart. He's so physical. He's the best running back in the AFC, and it wasn't close between anybody else.
Frank Gore might be my favorite NFL player of all time, and Derrick Henry is dramatically better, in my opinion.
Yeah. We all love Frank Gore. He's so fun to watch, but it's for so long. But yeah, Derrick Henry's
That's
a
not a
breed.
slight. King Henry
No.
is just something different.
I mean, there's like 10 running backs. Maybe there's at most 10 running backs in the history of football who are better than Derrick Henry. So yeah, not a slight in this at all.
And he's chopping down on that list.
Oh yeah.
Now after this, it gets a lot cloudier. I had to do some real digging. I think that we might have actually ended up with the same players because
Ew.
I had 3 guys that I kind of went back and forth between.
I did too.
My second is Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon's my second. No, he's my second. Yeah. So yeah, we agree on this. He missed a couple of games, and you could really tell how much of an impact he made on Houston.
Oh man, their run game was non-existent without Mixon.
And that really showed off how bad this interior has been at run blocking. They've been solid at pass protection, not great, but run blocking has been really an issue. The only guy who looks like he's putting anything worth anything out there is Shaq Mason. And I like Juice Scruggs as a pass protector, but man, the run game has not been his strong suit. And Joe Mixon has just an ability to kind of maneuver through the crap that gets sent his way, just make it hard. He's just a hard guy to tackle, and when he gets outside, he's electric. So this was kind of a fact. Having to, it's not just a factor of how good he's been on the field. It's how bad they were when he was off the field.
He almost feels like he's gotten better with age. He was never this dominant in Cincinnati. When he's been out there, he's been top 5 to 6 at worst, I would say. 12 total touchdowns is tied for 4th. 88.7 yards per game is 3rd, and he hasn't coughed the football up once.
And honestly, this is an indictment of Zach Taylor's run scheme as well. I mean, I was a big Joe Mixon guy, even when he was in Cincinnati, because I was just like, I mean, look at what's happening. Look at what he has to work with. He can't do anything with this. Maybe you're saying he's inefficient. Just watch the damn games, and he's not being given any opportunities. He's finally in a competent run scheme. It's not the best in the league, but he's looking real good. Deserves a spot in the Pro Bowl.
And then my third running back is another guy who fundamentally made it because of the touchdowns, James Cook. He just always seems to get more than is blocked up for him.
Yeah, he's my 3 too. I'm curious if we have the same 4. Tony Pollard. Yeah. I think this one was Tony Pollard and James Cook. It was razor thin for me, but like you said,
I switched him at least twice.
Yeah, so did I. I think I had Pollard my first time around, but I looked at just Cook, the touchdowns, how good he's been, just between the tackles, but also just, is he going to see the field better than any running back in the league? No, he's not. But you get him in space, and it's just a beauty to behold. He's gonna cough the football up on occasion. I actually don't know how many fumbles he has this year.
He hasn't had a lot, because if he had a lot, he would not have made my roster.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that was an issue last year. I think he's improved it, which is nice. He has not lost a fumble this year. My fault. He's been very good. Is he the most efficient running back? No, but
he's up there.
I mean, he is.
That's what did it over Tony Pollard for me. Tony Pollard essentially is Tennessee's offense. He's at least the only consistent facet, but he doesn't necessarily add big playability on a down-to-down basis. He's not necessarily going to turn that 2-yard carry into a 12-yard carry, and James Cook does that extremely consistently. 0.6 rushing yards over expected per attempt was the big number for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he'll have his bad plays, but I feel like every year there's less bad plays and there's more good plays, especially this year. And the 11 touchdowns is just impressive. I know he's getting at the 1, but still, you got to convert that. And for a guy like that, where everyone was like, this guy's never really going to be that short yardage back, it's really cool to see how far he's progressed in the short yardage, in the between the tackles game. He's not the best in the league at it, but he's definitely above average now. So deserves a Pro Bowl shout. 723 yards in the season, 550 of those are after contact. He's had a couple of plays this season where if it was another guy, he's not getting that edge quick enough. He's not getting past that defender. James Cook, he's a very great athlete as well. So I feel like he's been a big part of why that Buffalo's run game has been decent.
For a moment, I did consider Devon Achane because he's one of the most effective scrimmage players in the NFL, but between the tackles, he's a bottom half starter, and that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, I never had him on my list. I get what you mean, but no. The only other guy I kind of considered was Taylor, Jonathan Taylor, and he missed a few games. He hasn't looked like himself after the injury, but I still think he's been good. Just not as good as James Cook.
J.K. Dobbins has actually been sneaky good this year before the injury as well, but I know you don't have guys with season enders on your list, and he wouldn't have made it for me regardless. These were the halfbacks in the AFC. We're talking running backs, so now it's time to move on to the better, heavier running back position. Those are the fullbacks. This is going to be pretty chalky, I think.
I would be shocked if we didn't have the same guys.
AFC?
Ricard.
Yeah.
NFC?
Juszczyk.
Yep. Ricard is, I think... We talk about Juszczyk as the best fullback in the league. I think he is. This season, it's been Ricard.
I think that's fair because of what he does in the blocking game. They are different types of players. Ricard is the old school heavy personnel blocker, serves as King Henry's lean guy, and that makes sense. That makes sense. But Juszczyk, look, there are a million guys in San Francisco you can give the ball to. There have been times where he looked like one of the better guys in this backfield, and that's really saying something. Juszczyk is a playmaker. He can lead block. He can carry between the tackles on occasion, and he's a really good pass catcher. He's just an extremely easy player to root for. I don't know who I would choose. I think this is another choose-your-flavor type of situation, but they are clearly the top two running fullbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I honestly think that Kyle Juszczyk would be a top half tight end in the league if that was his full-time position, just because of how good he is at blocking. He can take a hit. I mean, in the back, Juszczyk is just so good at just absorbing a hit, but also leaking out of the backfield. There's nobody better at the position. There's not many people at the position anymore, but it's good to see Juszczyk and Ricard holding it down, and we had to have a fullback position on the list. But like you said, Ricard, he's an old school, nasty fullback. He's going to block. He's going to get downfield. He's going to ram you. He's been a big part of Derrick Henry's success, just having that lead blocker. And he's also been, good out of the backfield. Not as good as Juszczyk, because that's impossible, but he's made his name. He's made a couple of catches. He's gotten a couple first downs, and that just as that leak kind of thing. That's what you use the fullback for generally when you're running him on a route. They forget about him. He gets an open space. Oh, there's a broken tackle, and we got a first down. So both fun players to watch, and it's good that they're keeping the fullback name alive.
Shout out C.J. Ham on the Vikings and Alec Ingold on the Dolphins. They're definitely there.
Ingold, Broncos legend. Yeah, they are there, but had to go to Ricard and Juszczyk.
Ingold, Badger legend.
Ooh, good shout.
All right, so now we're going to move to our NFC wideouts. I think we have a pretty clear number one.
Do we? I mean...
Justin Jefferson?
Man,
did he not make the Pro Bowl for you?
Of course he made the Pro Bowl.
Okay.
No, he's not my number one, though. May I interest you in some Sun God?
All right. That I understand. Oh, okay.
Jefferson was almost my number one, though. I have no issues with that. But I was just like, Amon-Ra. I love the slot position. And what he's doing with it is just something you don't see every day. And yeah, Jefferson, I get it. And honestly, probably should be number one. I just wanted to give Amon-Ra some credit.
I think I forgot to write Amon-Ra down. And I know
he's
that
not in your Pro Bowl?
I didn't purposely omit him because he's not even in my honorable mentions. I might hate Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you have 4 wide receivers that you chose with a slot guy?
Yes.
Like 3 wide receivers and then a slot guy type of deal? Oh, no. All right. I'm going to have to make a quick retcon. I think I'm going to slot him in as probably my number 4.
Really?
But he will make it, yes. I think the down-to-down impact of Justin Jefferson is something that can't be overstated. We don't even need to spend too much time talking about that. He is kind of the epitome of an alpha X receiver in the NFL. I think it's between him and Jamar Chase, guys that can win downfield, can win at all three levels, make contested catches at a really high clip, elite run-after-catch threats. You can say Jamar has taken that crown, but Justin Jefferson is still an extremely unique player in that regard. Who's your second guy?
Justin Jefferson.
Who's your third guy?
So my third guy, it's tough with these kinds of players who they're elite. They're no-brainer Pro Bowlers if they've played the whole season. This guy hasn't played the whole season. He's still no-brainer Pro Bowler. I've got Puka Nacua in my third guy.
Wow, I do not have Puka in the list, but I completely understand because he looks top 10 at worst.
Honestly,
top 3 to 4 at best. He has been on a tear since he's been back.
I don't think there's 5 guys better. Puka Nacua, you're a tear. He's been on a tear, and he was great in the first week, obviously, against Detroit, and then he got hurt, and then we didn't see him for a while, and then he had one bad game after he came back, and then he's just a top 5 receiver. I obviously, there are guys that you can put in here over Puka that have played more games, but he's played 8 games. He's played over the half of the season. And I'm not going to put in anybody who's played half or less of the season, so Puka barely hit it. But I can't watch this guy. I can't see him do these things every week. Did you see that catch last week?
Which one?
The toe tap. The eyes.
The Julio Jones
The
Super Bowl
Julio
toe tap?
Jones. Yes, the eyes in his feet catch. There's like 2 other guys in football who can make that catch. I cannot watch this guy every week. I cannot look at the stats that he's accumulated. I cannot see him be a freak on a few plays every game and then every single down put out a good rep and not put him in the Pro Bowl.
And I just got a shout out. He's cut down on the drops too. That was an issue with his college tape, and he's gone from potential liability to maybe a little above average in terms of hands consistency. He is a deadly run after catch threat, the guy that you can quickly get the ball to on a screen. A really complete player, and he easily would have made my Pro Bowl roster if he just had maybe a few more games under his belt. For my 2, and these guys are all in pretty similar tiers. In fact, I would say that Puka is in this tier. I've got Terry McLaurin for the Commanders.
He just missed the cut for me.
He is a deadly deep threat, and I've been saying this for a while. I have long been a Terry McLaurin guy. He just hasn't had the quarterback play. His ability to get open deep with the route footwork and then track the ball in, make a tough catch. We all saw that play against the Bengals 6 or 7 weeks ago. That is still fresh in my mind. Terry McLaurin can do absolutely wild things, but he's an underrated run-after-catch threat as well. And again, it's not just for quarterbacks. I do think about surrounding situation. It's not the predominant factor, but what is helping Terry McLaurin get open with the Commanders? They leave him isolated almost every play, and they say, McLaurin, you need to win. You need to get open for your quarterback, and he does almost every time.
He's been so good. He is my 6. I don't feel great about it, but he is my 6. He's been so good. But Puka, ARSB, and Justin Jefferson were my top 3, and then after that I had just a all-out war for the 4th spot. It took me a long time to decide this 4th spot, but Terry's been so good. And it's not just the deep threat. You know, he can run the slant over the middle. He can run the out route. He can run a great corner route. He can he can do everything on the field.
He's a true X.
He really is. The only thing is that I haven't seen the consistency from Terry that I want from that elite number 1X, and that's what ultimately kept him off my list. I feel like the guys that I had above him just showed a little bit more consistency over the season. Maybe they didn't have the highest highs. Maybe that because nobody's had as high highs as Terry McLaurin has this season. Maybe sans maybe Jamar Chase, right? But Terry, he's a little inconsistent. He's still an elite receiver, but for an elite receiver, he's a little inconsistent. So I went with So he was my 6 ultimately.
Another guy with similarly high highs who hasn't necessarily always been consistent, but for an entirely different reason. A.J. Brown, he's top 3 when he's on the field, and he made it for me because I think this Philadelphia offense changes entirely when he's out there.
Yeah, and he makes it for me too. 10 games out of a 14-game season. Again, it's like he's not out there all the time, but as you said, there's just not many guys better. when he's on the field.
And he has the production too. That's the big thing for me is, sure, you might miss a few games, but are you good enough where you have the production to make up for it? And he checks that box.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's like 6th to 15th in receiving yards on the season.
He's right around there, yes.
He is the highest. He has the most receiving yards of anybody who's played less than 12 games, and he's played 10. So he's been insane. Or actually, I think Nico might have him beat. Maybe.
Nico, unsurprisingly, did make my Pro Bowl roster despite missing a few.
That he did for mine too. But that's the AFC. We'll get to that.
Yes,
in a second.
we'll
We got
get
to
to
talk
that.
about. We got to talk about AJ Brown because he is my favorite wide receiver in football right now. Because my favorite receiver of all time it's a tie between Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, Broncos legend, and Julio Jones. And I see a lot of Julio Jones in AJ Brown's game.
Just how strong both these guys are, despite being elite athletes that can threaten downfield. It's a joy to watch. The body control. He is one of the 3 to 4 most dominant wide receivers in the NFL, and he's unlocked a new gear where if he is healthy, he is going to be hyper-consistent. He is going to win in the short game. He's not going to drop the ball. Truly a complete player, and I think he does a ton for Jalen Hurts.
Exactly. I think that strength, that's a good point to make. He's kind of like what DK wishes he was, and he uses that strength well in obviously going up and getting it, snatching it away from the corner, but also in a way that strength is underrated in football. Is that slant. You come off the release, you beat your guy because he's got elite footwork, and he's really smart. He knows how to sell the 9 and then cut inside, and then you box him out. You use the strong hands to haul that in, and it's just it's a thing of beauty. So he just made my list. He's so talented, and the Eagles really miss him when he's not there. Jalen Hurts when AJ Brown is not there, it's a whole different thing. He just makes the Pro Bowl for me. And if Puka and him play the whole season, I don't think it's a contest. I don't think it's close between them and my 5th guy. But because they had to miss some time, it was.
Which duo would you rather have? A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith factoring out injuries, or Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? And yes, this is a topical transition because Jamar Chase is obviously my number 1 AFC wide receiver.
That's a good question. I'd say Chase and Higgins because I think the difference is Higgins and Smith. I'm not the biggest Smith guy. I like him, but I think Higgins is a slightly different tier. Last thing before we transition out of the NFC.
No problem.
Shout out my number 5, Drake London, over Terry McLaurin. I know it's a little bit, but I really like what we've seen from Drake London. The reason he didn't make the list over A.J. Brown is because in the Broncos game, he kind of got routed up by Patrick Surtain. It's Patrick Surtain. There's not many guys who aren't going to get routed up by Patrick Surtain, but A.J. Brown wouldn't have. We know that.
I have Jackson Smith and Jigba as an alt. He would have made it in the AFC.
Fair.
I factor in a little bit of recency bias, a little bit of projection, and there is damn near no one better in football right now, especially from the slot. It's him and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, Jackson. That's the thing. Overall, the consistency on the year hasn't been there. That's why he was he was a little bit lower on the list for me. But you're right. Recently, and I think recency bias is important for Pro Bowl because we're not picking who's had it's half who's has the best season, but who's been the best player as well. And JSN has just been nearly unstoppable from the slot in recent weeks.
He's developed the consistency, just more consistent hands as well, not dropping the football, and we've seen a whole different version of the Seahawks offense.
Yeah, and you know what? Him coming out of Ohio State, I wasn't the biggest JSN guy. I had Flowers over him, and the issue with him was I didn't see that elite speed. I didn't see that elite acceleration. Not even elite. I didn't see it. It was just average, and I was like, I don't know if you can be elite at the next level with that. He's found another gear. You know what I mean? It just looks like he's pulling away a lot better, and he's been great after the catch, very elusive. So I like this pick a lot. I like that as an alternate, and I think JSN has a great future with Seattle.
No wasted movement in his routes whatsoever. All right, now we get to talk about Jamar Chase. I think he's pretty good.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
Like, it's Chase. It wasn't close.
No.
I mean, first in receiving yards, first in touchdowns with 15, closest is 9, leads the league in yards after catch and yards after catch over expected.
A lot of that was without T. Higgins, so they were bracketing him, trying to slow down Jamar Chase, and it's too much to ask. You can't slow him down.
He's a freak.
Is there anything else we need to say about
No.
Chase? I mean, he essentially is the Bengals offense because the Bengals offense is the passing game, and Joe Burrow can only do so much for you because he's one guy. He needs a number 2, and that guy he's throwing to, who's wrecking games, that is Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, also obviously a nice piece. Who's your second?
Nico.
Yeah,
Yeah.
easily.
He's first in yards per game, guys.
Yeah.
That's all you got to say.
What he does for C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell is nice. Who's their 3 with Stephon Diggs out? Is it Xavier Hutchinson?
I think so.
John Mechie gets in there a little bit. The reason that this Texans offense with a terrible interior line, that it's Stroud, Mixon, and Nico Collins. That kind of offensive triangle where because you have Mixon, you can still run the ball, and because you have Stroud and Nico, you can still throw the ball. That is the reason that the Texans still have a real chance at a playoff spot. Their chemistry, rare.
Oh yeah, Nico and Stroud just have a sixth sense for where each other are in the field. When you watch that scramble drill, how Nico reacts when Stroud's on the run, it is just amazing. And Nico, he's always been a great jump ball guy. He's always been a guy you can throw it up to, and he'll try and pull it down. He'll do it better than most guys. But the biggest development this year has just been the route running. So consistent over the middle of the field. That inside cut has just gotten so much better. Obviously, he's always been really good at the outside stuff, the back shoulder throws. But his improvement, making an inside cut against inside leverage, it's really fun to watch.
He's not just the physical X anymore. He is the complete 3-level threat.
Absolutely. Speaking of physical X, we've got my boy George Pickens at my 3.
I love it. Are you factoring in the 15-yard penalties?
That's a plus for him. It just shows me he wants it. He wants it more than these other guys do. I know. George Pickens, I mean, the penalties are there, but that's what you got with George Pickens. And ultimately, I don't think he makes it in the NFC, but AFC is just a little bit of there's less depth at the receiver position in the AFC. Got a lot of promising rookies, or younger guys, but Pickens, what he's put on tape this year's been damn impressive.
What he does for the Steelers is unique because Russell Wilson can only win in so many different ways. The best thing Russell Wilson does is he throws the deep ball, and George Pickens is the Steelers' deep ball. His spectacular catch trait, man, I remember he was actually one of the first players I watched when I began scouting and had no idea what I was looking at. And I immediately pinpointed this guy might have the most spectacular hands of any player of all time. It's just everything. It's the toe taps, it's the one-handers, it's the jump balls. He is a wild player. And he has a lot of the production as well. He's been surprisingly consistent on a game-by-game basis, if not a play-by-play basis. He's a badass blocker when he's not drawing penalties. I totally understand. I went back-to-back slot guys with my 2. I said Lad McConkey and Khalil Shakir.
I love it. I've got Shakir as my 4. Lad just missed the cut for me. He just missed the cut because the rookie, he started a little slow because they just weren't giving him the opportunities, and Pickens has just been that guy throughout the season. Ultimately what decided it for me was it's not just with Russell Wilson. He was doing this kind of stuff with Fields, and that was a lot harder. So he's just a freak. I remember I had this when I was first starting out scouting, I was watching Pickens too, and I loved him coming to the draft. Because it was just like a guy this skinny should not be able to catch these 50-50 balls as often as he does. And then he puts on bulk, and now he's just unstoppable. So, yeah, Pickens is a freak, but Shakir and McConkey have been nearly unguardable from the slot. McConkey is just so elusive. Shakir, I believe he's got the highest catch rate of almost any receiver in the league.
Yes. Now, he did have his first drop of the season, so if we're looking for a nitpick, he has a drop, guys.
He dropped the ball, guys.
He still might have the best hands on a down-to-down basis of any player in the NFL. And it's not even like he's going the Tyler Lockett route where he just snags it and goes to the ground. He's effective in the run-after-catch game as well. He's a guy you can throw it to a couple yards short of the sticks, and he's not necessarily going to shrug off a tackle or put a great move on you, but he's going to find a way to fall forward. He's very effective in those conversion situations. And I think Josh Allen in this offense, he needs his trust guy. He needs someone who's just dependable because we haven't seen the hands consistency from Amari Cooper. Keon Coleman hasn't always been on the field, and when he is, sure, he's had really high highs, but not necessarily that 3-level threat yet, not a guy who can work underneath at a consistent level. They need Khalil Shakir to function and to be this deadly, efficient offense that they are, and I think that that's just a very rare role. I think he's one of the top slot options in the league.
Absolutely. I mean, and you look at it, you pointed out the yards after the catch. That's been so good this year because he gets 4.68 air yards per target and 11.3 yards per reception. He is running after. It's just been the offense. Let's pepper him with short targets and let him do what he does best after the catch. So Shakir, he made my slot role, and I think he's been pretty clearly the best slot in the AFC this year. McConkey's been really good. I loved him coming out of Georgia because he's just such a freak athlete as far as flipping the hips and just he's just so damn agile, and it's shown in his route running. One of the most polished route runners I've ever seen come into the draft, and it has shown already. He's been an immediate above average starter, and you know what, if he played like he had this is the last part of the season for the entire season, he's making the Pro Bowl, no doubt.
One of the reasons that McConkey went as late in the draft as he did, was he like the 31st pick? He was back end of the first, right?
He was 33. I think he was first pick day 2.
One of the reasons that he fell to the second round is people had concerns about his role. He's just a slot guy. The thing is that almost works to his advantage in some ways because you have that elite route runner in that area of the field. You can move him around a little bit. It makes him a lot harder to bracket. And if defensive coordinators could eliminate Ladd McConkey, they would, because he's essentially the only option Justin Herbert has. He's got the production. I've loved his efficiency. He doesn't drop the football. And because of what a key cog he is in that offense, we've seen what it looks like without McConkey, and it's not pretty. That's why he snuck in for me. All right, AFC tight ends. I imagine you went chalk here with Brock Bowers?
Yes, I went chalk with Brock Bowers. There is no chalk in the second spot, though. Brock Bowers, though, let's talk about him for a second. He's the best rookie tight end we've seen ever, maybe. I don't know. What he's doing this season, as I said earlier, he's my rookie of the year, and I doubt that changes. I'm a Bo Nix head. I'm a Broncos fan, obviously. Love Jaden Daniels, too. We've talked about that. But what Bowers is doing from the tight end position at a rookie year is unprecedented. You know, he fell in the draft because of the Kyle Hamilton thing, where maybe his position isn't going to be at a premium, so we can get him a little bit later. Raiders got a great one, and it's all the better that you're getting this season from Brock Bowers. I think he's 5th in receiving yards in the league, 1st in tight end receiving yards. You're getting this season, you still suck, so you might get the number 1 pick to get him a quarterback if you want to take a quarterback number 1 this year, which I don't know if you do. But that's not the point. Brock Bowers, he's been damn near unguardable by any linebacker in football. He can catch the ball over your head. He can make great catch. He's got great hands. He just hadn't dropped the ball much. His routes are really nice. They're really crisp. After the catch, he's really hard to bring down. There's just not a flaw to his game, really. And he's a rookie.
He essentially checks every box as a big slot type of player. Elite route runner, at least from the big slot position. Maybe he's not elite for a perimeter wide receiver or something like that, but zero wasted movement. And the reason I had a top 5 grade on him this year, or the reason I had a top 5 grade on him last year, his hands are maybe as natural as I've ever seen. The way that he snares the football and quickly tucks it away. He doesn't drop it. He makes tough catches. Excellent body control, just so light on his feet. Brock Bowers really is special. Now, the reason I would maybe pump the brakes a bit is because the blocking hasn't translated like we didn't expect it to. He is as much of a slot receiver as he is a conventional tight end, if not leaning more. I mean, he's deployed more in the slot than he is in line, but that's not to take anything away from Bowers. He's been spectacular. He's been everything the Raiders could have hoped for. And he's my number 1 as well. Who's your second tight end?
Jonnu Smith. There's no real right answer here. There's just a plethora of guys you could have gone with. I'm curious to see who you went with.
Jonnu's 3 for me.
Okay.
And I went back and forth between Jonnu and another player who is pretty good, has a solid legacy, that being Travis Kelce. I had to leave Kelce off. God damn, he just hasn't been efficient enough.
Yeah, he hasn't. Kelce, he actually wasn't close to my top.
His first down numbers are really good, and he is way up the blocking.
Yeah, that's the thing. The blocking's been a lot better. It's really good to see that from him in a late season. And he's been better this late part of the season, but he just hasn't been that same level of dominant And what he's so good at is catching the ball and running, and nobody else can seem to catch up to him. He's got this. What his strength in the league has always been. If any of you know the Turtle from the Flash comics, it's like everyone around him just goes slower. All right, he runs, and they look like they're getting faster, and then they enter his web. They enter his sphere of green or red in this case, and they just go slower. They can't tackle him, and they just can't seem to find him on the field. And while that's been there this year, it hasn't been as prevalent.
I think he's forced like 2 missed tackles on the entire season. It really has dried up, and I think he's saving some of that for the playoffs. He's choosing his spots a little bit more as an older guy. It really hurt me to leave him off. I have him on the bubble, but I can't have him as an alt because I don't think he would have made it in the NFC for me. Jonnu is my 3 because he's just been such an excellent receiving threat. He's not a blocker either. He's another big slot type of guy. But somehow, in a room with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, he might be the Dolphins' top playmaker.
And yeah, you can tell I value receiving a lot more than blocking. I do value blocking in tight ends, but ultimately when we're talking about Pro Bowl stuff, receiving is just going to be more valuable. And, the offensive line's already bad enough in Miami. Jonnu, I don't even know if it's his fault. He's not the best blocker. But yeah, who do you have number 2?
I have Mark Andrews.
That's fair. He was my 3. Yeah, that's fair.
Mark Andrews, I had to factor in that he's splitting time with Isaiah Likely. Now, when I say splitting time, they use them at the same time all the time. The Ravens like to live in 12 personnel. He's the same old Mark Andrews, if not a little better. He's come on down the stretch. It feels like he's gotten progressively better because he started the season very slow, recovering from injury. Well, he's back to being good old excellent route runner, excellent contested catch guy Mark Andrews, and he's played a huge role in what's been a really good offense this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I value that full season, the full body of work. So that's why I ended up with going with Jonnu because he's had more of that full body of work. But Andrews, I agree, he's probably a little bit better than Jonnu Smith this year, though it is close. Jonnu's had a really good year. Don't want to talk down on him. He's had a really good year. There's a reason he's in the Pro Bowl for me. But Andrews has just been so good. Sure hands. He'll go up and get it. He's just a good blocker too, and that's important in Baltimore. You need your tight ends to be good blockers. So yeah, what he's doing, and it's just so it's clearly been a breath of fresh air for Lamar, having him back to his old self. Just somebody you can rely on because Zay Flowers is really good, but you can't rely on him. He's not the most reliable receiver. So just having a guy you can go to on 3rd and 6 just helps so much. You know what I mean? So, and also a guy who knows Lamar really well is going to be able to work with him in the scramble drill. They clearly have very good chemistry. So that's helped Lamar out a lot as well. Andrews just missed it for me because of that full body work. But at the end of the season, all pro lists, maybe he makes it if Bowers has like a dive.
Wait, did you only pick 2 tight ends?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you had 3, so I listed my 3.
Well,
so
no,
Jonnu would miss
let's say
for
I
me.
have 3. Mark Andrews is a Pro Bowler. Yay.
There we go. We go. Every quarterback needs his trust target. Lamar Jackson does. And Brock Purdy does as well. George Kittle's your first-team All-Pro, alpha number 1 tight end, right?
Yes, 100%. I love what Bowers is doing, but Kittle's on another level than anybody else this season.
He is the best receiving tight end in the NFL. I would say Bowers brings a different skill set. Bowers has traits that are better than Kittle's, but overall, I would give that nod to Kittle. He's night and day as a blocker. He might be the best blocking tight end in the NFL.
Best receiving and blocking tight end.
Like counting the 265-pound Mercedes Lewises of the world, George Kittle might still be the best blocker.
Yeah, and it's not the fact. And what's crazy about it is, okay, well, he must be helping. Must help because Trent Williams is there. He's generally on the right side of the concept, and Williams is the left tackle. So he's doing this. He's basically another right tackle for them, and that's helped out Colton McKivitz season a lot, having him as a blocker. And he's unguardable as a receiving threat, and when you can guard him, he's still going to catch the football. Like it doesn't matter how close you are on him. He's going to catch the ball. It's inevitable. It's like the Chiefs down 2 points with a minute to go. They're going to drive down the field. They're going to get a field goal. You know it's going to happen. And George Kittle is going to catch the football no matter where he is in the field, no matter if he's double covered or not. He's a freak of nature.
Most people know George Kittle is the best tight end in football. I think he's underrated because a lot of people don't know that this is a legit top 5 caliber player. Truly a guy with no weaknesses. My second guy is Trey McBride for the Cardinals.
Mine too. I think this was cut and dry.
He's a receiving satellite. He is the number 1 receiving option for the Cardinals, and he's stepped up his game as an inline blocker as well. Just a very complete player, certainly a better receiver than a blocker, but that's the more important aspect of the position, so no complaints there.
Yeah, he's just been a safety net over the middle of the field. You throw it to him, and you know what? He's going to catch the ball. There's not too many drops on the tape. He's just a really solid route runner. So smooth. You know what? He makes his cut, hands up, catch the ball, goes down with it if there's a guy in front of him, or he keeps running him if there's not. He makes it look easy, and I think that's something that not a lot of tight ends can do. McBride, he looked real good in his rookie year, and he's just taken another step. This one wasn't particularly close. It was always going to be him and McBride in the NFC, Kittle and McBride in the NFC. So it's really good to see him doing well because I really liked him coming out of the draft.
After McBride, it definitely got a little bit more contentious. Who did you put in the Pro Bowl?
Otten.
I put Tucker Kraft.
Okay, yeah. See, so the issue here is that I only had 2 tight ends, so I didn't think about the third tight end spot much.
Sure.
I had Otten as an honorable mention. I just forgot about Tucker Kraft, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think I'd have to dive in more. I'd have to watch them both again. Because how I went with it, I was like, we've watched basically every game. We have Red Zone and we watch games back on tape. But so if it's clear to us these guys were better, I just slotted them in. But if I was really unsure about 2 and I couldn't make up my mind, I'd go back and I'd watch the tape. I'd watch some plays. NFL Pro, by the way, is a great way to watch tape really quickly. You can get like the big necessary plays that you need to see how good a player's been this season. Not full, you can't get the full picture, but it's nice when you're in a time crunch. It's finals week. We don't have the time to watch a bunch of guys. It's nice. So I would have been able to go. I couldn't watch Otten versus Kraft, but Otten's been really good this year as far as a vertical threat.
He was my number 4. They were really close. I did go back and forth on them since I picked 3 Pro Bowl tight ends. Kraft has just been so clutch. He's like Robert Tonyan, but a lot better. Robert Tonyan, but an even better run after catch threat. He just has a knack for boxing out and making that really difficult catch. Cade Otton has a little bit better production overall. I think part of that is they've just used him more.
Yeah.
With Evans and Godwin out, they really did pepper him with targets, and you've seen a little bit of a higher drop rate. Otton is the slightly better blocker. That's another pick your flavor type of situation where I just preferred Kraft a little more, maybe as a Packers fan. I think Kraft is getting hot, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some people you're going to hear, I've heard some people say, well, Kraft is just starting while they're waiting Musgrave to come back.
Not true.
Yeah, no, I saw an NFL.com analyst say this.
Terrible.
Tucker Kraft is the number 1 tight end on that team. He's arguably the best receiving threat they've got. And also, he's been considerably better than Otten as a blocker this season. So
Interesting. You would take Kraft's blocking over Otten's.
I would.
I think they're close.
I like Otten, but I think they haven't used him as much as a blocker because we want him more as a vertical threat, and I think that's kind of helped shield him. Because if he was used more as a blocker, I do think there would be a little bit more exposures on his tape. But what I love about Otten is how well he gets downfield, but also how good he is after the catch. You can throw the tight end screen to him, and that's just such a lethal threat. So he's been massive in the absence of Godwin and Evans, and really kind of I don't think anybody really expected this.
Oh, certainly not. And finally, shout out Cole Kmet. He's been probably the most dependable pass catcher that Chicago's got, and Keenan Allen is on that team. So
Absolutely. Kmet's had a good season.
Now, speaking of blocking, it's offensive line time. I want to start with the offensive tackles. We'll do NFC first. This is a loaded tackle group. Who's your first guy?
Man, you're right. This is a loaded group. There's 5 guys, I think, that absolutely deserve to make the Pro Bowl. But my first guy is Lane Johnson. He's the best tackle in football right now.
Mine too, although I will say he was barely my first team All-Pro.
I agree. Barely, because there's a guy in Detroit.
A guy that didn't make my Pro Bowl.
What?
98.4% true pass set efficiency. So that efficiency is essentially you drop back to pass protect. Do you give up a pressure or not? 98.4% of the time, when you're eliminating the screen game, quick drops, play action, all of that, he keeps his quarterback clean. Extremely rare trait, and he's a really solid run blocker, so no complaints there. They leave him on an island. Doesn't matter.
Absolutely no sacks allowed this season, only one penalty. He's been unbeatable, like you said. Leave him on an island. There's just no issues. You can run behind him, and you have no qualms with it. Absolutely. He's an elite run blocker. In the pass protection, he is unflappable. Hurts has greatly benefited from having him as a safety net. And, yeah, Lane Johnson is the best tackle in football right now. I think he's been the best tackle in football for a fair bit. The only guy that really has come close is Trent Williams in recent years.
Is your second player Sewell?
Well, yes.
My second player is Tristan Wirfs,
See,
and it was
this is-
very
you
close between him and another guy, Jordan Mailata.
Well, so this is insane. You don't have Sewell as you don't have
Sewell
as a
is an
footballer.
alt. He easily would have made it in the AFC, so he will make like my official Pro Bowl roster with alternates.
I get it because it's so difficult to leave guys off this list because I don't have Wirfs on this list. I also don't have Mailata on this list.
I understand both because Wirfs has a comparatively easy job since they get the ball out so fast, and he's not an elite run blocker. And Mailata's been arguably better than Lane Johnson, but he has missed some time.
Yeah, that's ultimate. Mailata has been one of the best 3 tackles in the NFC. He's just missed some time, and that's ultimately what docked it for him because I think Zach Tom has been
Zach Tom's my 5.
very good this season. I think he's been very good, and he's played all the games. And it's a factor of why. Let's talk about Penei Sewell for a second. We don't need to talk about him too much. Feeling like he gets a lot of press as an offensive compared to most offensive tackles.
He's a badass.
Yeah, he's really good. He made my list for a reason. He's a reason that this run game works so well to the right. I saw Kevin Zeitler is the #1 Pro Bowl offensive guard vote getter in voting right now, and I think a big part of that is what am I thinking of?
No, Zeitler is #1 in guard Pro Bowl voting. You're right about that.
Yeah, but no. Yeah, no. Zeitler's #1 in Pro Bowl voting, and I think part of that is he's looked better because he has Sewell on the outside, and that has made his job a little easier. I think he's been very good. That definitely has made his job a little bit easier. And in the pass protection game, the only issue you'll have with Sewell is that there are a couple of times this season, when I say a couple, I mean 2 or 3, where he's just had a bad miss and he's gotten beat and the quarterback gets sacked because of it, namely against Hunter in the Houston game. And ultimately, that's what decided it over Lane Johnson over him because Lane Johnson hasn't had any of those misses. He's been practically as close to perfect as you can get as an offensive tackle. But Penei Sewell, he's dominant. He's an elite quarterback. He's an elite running back. He's an elite tight end. So he makes my Pro Bowl. But I get it. There's a lot of talent in the NFC offensive tackle rooms.
You know who's literally statistically as close to perfection as you can get?
Who?
Tristan Wirfs.
All right.
0 sacks allowed, 99% pass block efficiency. He allows a pressure on 1 out of 100 dropbacks. That comes with a caveat because they do get the ball out like comically fast in Tampa Bay. His job is inherently easier. However, I couldn't deny the tackle who's #1 in the NFL in pass block efficiency a spot. I just could not do it.
That's fair. And you know what? It's not even that these guys get the ball out quick because, yeah, they do get the ball out quick, but then you watch the games, it's like these guys aren't close to getting pressure on Baker. Wirfs, even if Baker takes another second, he might get sacked from another place, not because Tristan Wirfs. Ultimately, I put Tom over Wirfs because Wirfs was my 5 because I had Mailata as my 4. I put Tom and Mailata over him just because they're better in the run game. They're just a little bit more efficient and a little bit more consistent. So, yeah, but Wirfs is one of the best pass-protecting offensive linemen in the league. Period. And Baker, just having that left tackle be secure, having that blind side where he knows he's just not going to get hit from behind. That's always been kind of like a thing that Baker's been should be a little bit afraid of because he'll get stripped on occasion. He got it in Cleveland sometimes, and he just doesn't have to worry about that with Wirfs. So he's a really talented player. He'd make it in the AFC.
Even Gedeke has been great on the right side, and still, shout out Trent Williams. He's missed a little bit of time. He's still Trent Williams. He's maybe lost half a step, but still an excellent player in both phases.
Yeah, and he'd make the AFC too. It's just such a lopsided.
Moving over to the AFC, I'm interested. Who's your top tackle?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it is Teron Armstead.
Teron Armstead was my second. I have Rashawn Slater, number 1.
That's fair. I have Slater as my 2. I think these are the clear-cut top 2 tackles in the league. Teron Armstead and Slater, I mean, you look at them both in the pass pro. It's just hard to beat them. It's hard. With Slater, it's hard to get around him. Like, he just drops, and you cannot beat him around the edge. So, okay, there's a lot of guys like that. They're just really athletic. We can't beat them around the edge, but they're susceptible to counters. Not Rashawn Slater. He is going, you try to cut inside, he's going to wall that off, and he's going to force you into your own teammate, and you're both going to get knocked down. So, Rashawn Slater is just, he's so good as a pass protector, and in the run game, he's also very good. Not as good as he is as a pass protector, but still very quality.
When he can climb and really use that quickness, he can absolutely detonate guys in the zone running game. That's what did it for me.
Especially at the second level.
That's why I thought I might go back on this, but I actually have him as the second best overall tackle. I have him ahead of Wirfs and Mailata and Sewell. He is my second-team All-Pro, but it's extremely close. And then, yeah, Teron Armstead, I think you covered it. Very good pass protector. You can't run through him, and he's been really effective in the run game as well. Who else made it in?
Okay. One more thing about Teron Armstead. Normally,
Go ahead.
Why he makes my number 1 is he's always been one of the best tackles in football, but normally the reason why he's a little bit lower in this list, just on average, is because he gets hurt. He's had his injury issues. Hasn't had those this season. I believe he's played in every game. If not,
I think so.
I think maybe he missed one, but he's been basically perfect. The third one, guy who got an extension today,
Garrett Bowles.
Garrett Bowles, Denver Broncos left tackle. Now, I'm curious, before I start on Garrett Bowles, I'm curious to see who you have 3.
I have Tunsil. It surprises me. I know. He has really gotten cleaner down the stretch. His pass protection efficiency has been very, very good. Garrett Bowles has been excellent as well. If we did 4, he would have made it. I think he's going to make my official roster. What does it for me is the 11 penalties. It's number 1 in the league among tackles.
Though, doesn't Tunsil have
He does not.
10?
I don't believe so. We need to check on this.
Because I looked at Tunsil, and that the penalties are definitely an issue for Bowles. I agree, and that almost kept him off my list. But you know what? Tunsil's got 17.
What? He has 17 flags?
That's what kept him off my list. He's been getting flagged. That's 133rd out of 133 tackles.
I believe
according
you,
to PFF.
I need to see this on my database because maybe I read. I must have misread that. I obviously would not have chosen him with 17 flags.
Tunsil's a good player, but he's just gotten flagged way too much for me to consider him.
That's freaking insane. 17.
He was like 7 on my list.
Oh, I know what it is. I think I was sorting by pass protection flags. Yup.
Yeah, in the run game, he has just been holding constantly. That's
Oh, that's what it is. Yup, because all of Bowles are in the pass game and Tunsil's are in the run game.
That's the thing
that's
with
good to
Bowles.
know.
He's gonna get flagged for holding 12 times on the season. All of the other reps are gonna be really good though. I think he's only allowed 1 sack on the season.
He's been crazy efficient. I don't know if we're gonna put this in the show. I'm retconning my call, by the way. It is gonna be Garrett Bowles. Bowles is my 3.
If you're cool with it, I want to put this
Go
in.
ahead. 17 flags. Holy hell.
It's insane. Tunsil, he's been really good. If you want to talk about PFF, he's got an 89 pass blocking grade, but fuck, the penalties are bad. You can't get flagged 17 times in a season and make it. Garrett Bowles has just barely breached that line of flags. And it just being barely acceptable because of how great he's been outside. And also, that's just kind of an issue with the Broncos' offensive line as a whole. They just get penalized a little bit more. Not a refs issue. That's just a fact of, I think that's coaching. That we want you to go out there and do things more. So Bowles has 12 penalties on the season. Still pretty bad.
It's not 17.
But ultimately, who's behind him that you would put over him despite the penalties in the AFC? My 4 was Deion Dawkins.
I actually had Spencer Brown.
Ooh, interesting.
Dawkins has had a great season as well.
They've both been good.
They've been a big part of Buffalo's offense.
Absolutely. They've both been real good. But yeah, Dawkins and Brown, they're just not on the level of Bowles is on most snaps. I think the Broncos have the number 1 most efficient offensive line in pass protection, and that is a Garrett Bowles stat. There's nobody on this Broncos offensive line who is as good. You look at Broncos. You watch Broncos games. Bo Nix just isn't pressured from the left. Even that game against the Raiders, where he got pressured constantly, he just was never pressured from the left side. Tyree Wilson beat up on Mike McGlinchey a lot. Garrett Bowles had Max Crosby in a torture chamber, man. Max Crosby got a few pressures, and that was when they moved him to the right side. They were picking on Mike McGlinchey. They were blitzing a lot. I mean, there was one snap where Garrett Bowles, they rushed 2 guys at him. Somehow, somebody rushed 2 guys at him.
He blocked both.
He got a hand on both of them, pushed one of them. He pushed the linebacker down, and then he hit like a really quick, almost 180-degree turn to block Tyree Wilson coming off the edge, and Bo Nix barely pushed around. Garrett Bowles is just a freak when he's not being penalized. So, and they extended him today, 4 years, $82 million. Absolutely deserves it. Looking like he's going to start and end his career as a Bronco. You'll love to see that in the modern day NFL. So, Bowles makes my Pro Bowl, and if it wasn't for the penalties, he's probably a no-brainer.
So we have the same 3 tackles. Now we're going to move down to guards in the AFC.
There's a lot of guys who deserve it. I don't know if we'll have the same 3.
I think we might.
I think we have the same 1.
Joe Tooney?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's 0 sacks allowed, 1 penalty.
And he's been destructive in the run game. A big part of why Kansas City can still run a really competent, effective, chain-moving offense because they have that easy button on the interior.
Like, he's just pushing guys. And he's not the strongest guy either. He's strong, but he's not the strongest guy. It's the fact that he's just better, technically, than every other guard in football. He's just better than them. So, Tooney does whatever he wants in the field. And it works because he's just so sound fundamentally. And then the pass protection game, you're just not getting across his face.
No way.
You're not crossing him, and you're not powering through him. He's got a great anchor. Mahomes knows he's not getting any pressure from the interior from Tooney, Smith, and Humphrey. So
now, contrasting that extreme technicality that makes Tooney so great, you know who's just an absolute asshole is Quinn Miners.
Yes, sir. I have him 3 on my list. Absolutely deserves this spot. You know, he's an asshole. He'll hit you. He's a road grader through and through. He's going to push you down, and he is a monster in the run game where he's made his stride this year and last year, but this year as well. It's just the pass protection. He's just getting a lot more solid. There'll be bad reps, but, man, he's only allowed 1 sack on the season.
He's been really good.
He's been good. Great run blocker, good pass blocker, deserves a Pro Bowl spot. And again, Broncos offense, I think they've got a 99 pass blocking grade. And it's because Miners is protected from the right side and Bowles is protected from the left side. He's been so good.
UW Whitewater alum. I toured there. All right. And then third, the reason that I think we're going to have the same 3 guys because, you know, we had Chalk, we had a Bronco, and then we've got Quentin Nelson.
Yep.
The league is so much better when Quentin Nelson is a Pro Bowl caliber guard.
It is, man. He did not have the best season last year. The Colts offensive line didn't have the best season last year, but he's having that season this year.
He's just really good in both phases. He moves guys in the run game against both gap and zone concepts, and the pass protection efficiency is back. Just very complete. The guy that the Colts thought they were getting and were getting for 3 to 4 years after they drafted him, he's hopped right back on the wagon and been exceptional.
Yeah, and Nelson's always been one of those guys that the public he's slightly overrated.
He's the lineman that everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody knows Quentin Nelson. He's really good, but he's not the best guard in
He
football.
was for a minute there.
Yeah, but not anymore, and that's fine because it's really hard to be the best guard in football. I have him as my 2, though. Only allowed 1 sack on the season, and he's, again, as you said, in the run game, he can do anything. He's athletic enough to get out to the outside and block and get to the second level, and his head's on a swivel. He's just getting guys, and then the gap, he's just going to run you over. So he's so good in the run game. Big part of why you can run left a lot more. Him and Ryman on the left side have worked real well together. And then the pass game, he's just he's had a better awareness for what's going on around him this season. So Nelson deserves a spot in the Pro Bowl. We have the same 3 guys. Trey Smith got left off the list for both of us.
Was there anyone who was close for you? I mean, Trey Smith actually would have made the Pro Bowl had he played in the NFC, I would say.
Well, let me. Who do I have in the NFC? Let's see.
John Simpson also would have made it for me as an alt.
As in the
in
NFC?
the NFC, yes.
He would. I don't think he would have made it for me, but yeah, Smith would have made it for me. Yeah, I did consider Smith for a little bit. I considered putting him in over Miners, but he's the weakest link of that Chiefs interior. which is saying a
Which
lot.
has like the best guard in the NFL, and spoiler alert, the best center in the NFL.
Yeah, spoiler, Creed Humphrey is our number one center, both of us. There's just no chance. We did not compare rosters before that. That's just how good Creed Humphrey is. There's nobody in contest.
No slight to Frank Ragnow. He's still a really good center, but Creed Humphrey has taken that crown. He's excellent.
Yeah, important to note that all this, we didn't see each other's rosters. We're hearing it for the first time. But yeah, Creed is that good. Joe Tooney is that good. Best center, best guard in football, in my opinion. Trey Smith is not the best center or the best guard in football, so he's the weak link. And I think he's a really good player. He's just helped out a little bit by that. In the run blocking game, he's real good. He can get downfield and he can maul guys. The only thing is he's just not as consistent as all three of these guys, the other guys in the pass blocking game.
I would completely agree. He might not be quite as effective of a player if he wasn't plugged into this elite interior offensive line.
Absolutely.
Now moving to the NFC, I think we have a pretty clear one. Kevin Zeitler, who we touched on earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just been. Maybe it's a factor of this Lions offensive line, but also it's just you can't punish someone for their surroundings. He's just been really good. In offensive line, it's never going to be as much of a factor because you do have to deal with a lot of crap consistently. No matter if you're the starter, no matter if you're one-on-one or getting a double team, you still have to be really good. And Zeitler has been really good. It wasn't clear-cut for me, but it was. Ultimately, Zeitler's pass blocking is better than my number 2 this year, which my number 2 is Chris Lindstrom. I think Lindstrom's been a better run blocker, but Zeitler's been a little bit more consistent in the pass game, and I like that balance a little bit more, so I put him as my number 1, and Lindstrom's my number 2.
I agree that Lindstrom is a very good run blocker, but I think his pass protection has been a serious issue. He did not make it for me.
That's fair. He's been one of the best run blockers in football, and
he's so good. He's one of the 3 best guards in the conference. He just hasn't been this season, in my opinion, barely.
My thing with the pass blocking, though, was I'm not going to fault him for as much of it because the stats don't look perfect. But when you look at him, he's average in as a pass blocker. He's not below average.
Not a liability.
Like the stats may say. It's just Kirk Cousins has been awful.
He's protecting a quarterback who can't move.
Exactly. Like this, and when Cousins loves to step up, so he's going to step up into a lot of interior sacks. When you step up and then you wait 2 seconds to throw the football, it's really hard for the offensive guard to protect against that. So that's what made Lindstrom get in for me. And it wasn't a sneak in. And it was also just the fact that I didn't see other guys that should be in over him. There's a fair few quality guys here, but I don't think anybody's got the dominance that Lindstrom does in the run game. They don't have that. That's my thing. You know what I mean? They don't do anything as good as that. So that's what got Lindstrom in for me. I'm curious who's your 3 or who's your 2.
Because I'm a total hack, I just chose 3 of my favorite players. Kevin Zeitler, Badger, Elton Jenkins, Packer, Tyler Smith, Golden Hurricane.
Fair. That's fair. Elton was my 4. He's not my 3.
I get it. He's been one of the better pass blocking guards in the league.
Run game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still think it's good.
It's working for Josh Jacobs.
It is. And he's good as I think I talked about this in one of our prediction episodes. He's such a good pull blocker. But whenever you run the gap a little bit more, it's not as good. So he just missed my list. I love the Tyler Smith shout out to you. Golden Hurricane. I think he was my 6 or my 5. No, he was my 6 because Pony was my 5.
Oh, wow.
Pony was my 5. Yeah.
I like it.
My 3, though, I don't know if this is the one where I think I might have been a little bit out there. I don't know if you'll agree. Damian Lewis.
My 4.
Okay, that's great. Minds think alike. Okay, great. Because Damian Lewis is, when I said earlier in the show, Chuba Hubbard is 2 of 11 players who have done anything consistently on the offense for Carolina. That second guy's Damian Lewis.
Taylor Moton's been good.
Not consistently.
Nah, that's fair. I think that's fair, especially not in the run game where Damian Lewis has been really good.
Yeah, Lewis has just been there every down, giving it his all. He just hasn't let much through. even when Young was being insane in the first part of the season, even when Dalton was kind of deteriorating after he played a couple of games, he was always there. He was always the strong part of that offensive line. He could seal guys off whenever they come inside and whenever they try to beat him with power. He's always been a little bit smaller than everybody else, but he can anchor well still. So he's got that kind of trait where he can use his leverage well, because I believe he's 6'2", but he's going to hit you from underneath. He's going to do real well. So I picked him over Tyler Smith and Dominic Pony and Elgton Jenkins, just because I wanted to give him credit for thriving in a situation which most guys probably aren't going to thrive.
These are the deep cuts that you signed up for. We're going to step in one more spot, and we're going to go to the NFC centers. Do you have Frank Ragnow, number one?
Yeah, that was easy. Because Ragnow, I mean, we all know Ragnow. Again, another reason why Zeitler's been so good this year, why he was our number one, because when you've got Sewell and Ragnow on each side, it's really easy to do stuff. But still got to give credit to Zeitler, but got to give more credit to Ragnow. He's the number 2 center in the league, next to spoiler Creed Humphrey. But he's just a mauler, and he's sound, and Goff trusts him. This is a weird thing. He's really he doesn't make mistakes snapping the football. That's like the thing he has.
It matters. It's undervalued.
That's the thing he has over Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey's always had that issue. It's gotten a lot better. He doesn't make those mistakes. Still have some mistakes. The ball is snapped perfectly. Every time you watch a Detroit game, Ragnow snaps it perfectly. It does matter. It does matter. So that's the one thing he does better than Creed. He does things better than Creed Humphrey. That's one thing. But real question is, who's your number 2?
I have Tyler Biadasz.
I do too.
Really?
Yes.
Nice.
This is that. Okay, we are the NFC offensive line picture. We have it on the same level.
It was kind of slim pickings, actually. The only other guys that I considered were Yelda Froholt for the Cardinals and Bo Limmer for the Rams. A rookie and a guy whose name I can barely pronounce. Ultimately, I just really like how sound Biadasz has been in pass protection. I think it's done a ton for Jaden Daniels this season.
Absolutely. You know, in Dallas, he didn't thrive as much as he should have or he could have, because, you know, that's a gap-heavy system. We're just going to run it down your throat, and Biadasz is just a little bit smaller. His strength is the athleticism. They've been getting him on the move in Washington, just getting him to the outside. They've been pulling with the center, which is always a fun thing to watch. He snaps it, and then he just starts running to the left very quickly, and it works. Been a big part of Brian Robinson's success. You know, you can run up the middle, and you know Biadasz has that sealed off. And I think he's slightly worse in pass protection, but he's still pretty good, so... Biadasz makes it. This was a factor of there's just not many great centers in football because it's a hard position to play correctly. There's just also not as many. Like that you called out Hjalte Froholt.
However, when there are great centers, they tend to be Badgers.
This is true. They develop those interior guys excellently.
All right. This is more of a formality. Victor, who is your top AFC football conference center, and why is it Creed Humphrey?
My top AFC football conference center is...
as the conference is called.
It's Tyler Linderbaum. I'm just kidding. It's Creed Humphrey because it's... Man, there's nobody better.
He's best in the NFL as a run blocker. He's best in the NFL as a pass protector. By the eye test, by the metrics.
No sacks allowed. Only one time he was penalized. He's the best on that interior, which is the best interior in football by a wide margin. Maybe one of the best interiors we have ever seen a football team trot out there. Creed Humphrey is nearly unbeatable in every facet of the game. When you are just running a straight up block one-on-one, you're just not going to get past him. He's so strong. His arms, he'll latch on. He's not going to move. You're not going to move when he's latched onto you. If you hit him with the bull, he's going to stand strong. He's going to anchor. You're not going to move an inch. If he gets the second level in the run game, guess what? You are getting run over. His head is on a swivel. He's going to hunt guys. There was one play this season where he blocked 3 separate guys at the second level. Bang, you're down. Bang, you're down. Third guy, throw him down too. He's just a freak. In pass protection, you can't get past him. There's nobody better.
But Brian Gutekunst wanted Josh Myers.
Oh, man. We talk about Jefferson Rager a lot. We don't talk enough about Myers Humphrey.
Objectively terrible. My second is Tyler Linderbaum. I imagine you have the same. He's taken a big step up. He's been a big part of the success in Baltimore. The reason that they can run the ball so efficiently on the interior, and his pass protection has been very nice as well.
He finally he earned that Pro Bowl spot this year. Last year he just got it because I think he was a high pick the year before, and he was playing decently. This year he earned the spot. I think last year there was a couple of guys who deserved to get it over him. Not that he's the backup center in the Pro Bowl. It doesn't really matter. But, you know, he's definitely taken a step forward in pass protection. No sacks allowed. Been real good. Run game, he still has his moments where it's, well, could have done something better there, but
I agree.
overall, there's very few centers in football that can pull as well as he can and get to the outside, because they love to do that. They love to pull him and get him to the outside as extra help for Derrick Henry running to the left or right. So really good. The only other guy I had in competition was Joe Tippmann. I feel like he's come on strong over this last half of the year. So he's been good alongside John Simpson. So yeah, Tippmann deserved at least a shout out, but it was Humphrey and Linderbaum.
I got to shout out Aaron Brewer, the weirdest player in football, the weirdest lineman in football, I should say. A run blocking specialist who weighs like 290 pounds. I have no idea what's going on in Miami. But I think it's about time we pivot to the defensive side of the ball in what feels like about hour 8 of our Pro Bowl Spectacular.
We can go for another 8.
Let's start off with our edge rushers in the AFC. This is a loaded edge group. Who's your number one? Are we about to have the classic conversation?
We're not about to have the classic conversation. And we'll get to that in a second. But my number one is Myles Garrett.
Mine too, easily. Well, not easily, but easily over TJ Watt.
TJ Watt's your 2?
TJ Watt's my 3. Trey Hendrickson is my 2.
TJ Watt didn't make my list.
He's been really inefficient this year.
Yep. I was shocked. We were talking about this before the show started, I think. It was like, who was the guy that you expected to like a lot more? TJ Watt. He's been really good. Obviously, he's TJ Watt. But when you look at all the stuff around the league, whenever I do these kinds of things, I like to see what other people are doing, right? Whenever I've got an idea of what I want to do, I was like, okay, what are other people thinking? I look up, here's my Pro Bowl vote. Everybody is TJ Watt first. And I just don't see it. I think I don't think Highsmith and Herbig are doing great because of him. I think they're helping him out.
They're dramatically more efficient than him. Hayward has been more efficient than him. I think Keanu Benton has been more efficient than him this season. Now, he contributes in other ways, and I think we can have the TJ Watt conversation right now. He did make the Pro Bowl for me. 5 forced fumbles on the season. It's first. He can drop back into coverage at times. He can mess with your passing lanes by knocking the ball down. 16 quarterback hits is first in the league. Consistently, it feels like he's really good at racking up sacks and QB hits, but not pressures. And, okay, if you're Dante Fowler or Tack McKinley or whoever the pressure-to-sack ratio darlings were in the past, that's one thing. If you're TJ Watt, where you're just consistently picking the right spot, I think that's another. And he's been shut down in run defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it was weird that he missed it was so hard for him to miss the Pro Bowl, especially because my 4, we'll get to him, but I was like, I don't know if I can pit this guy over a TJ. I just barely did. But
Wait, you have 4?
Yeah.
And TJ didn't make it for you?
No.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry to TJ, but it's just I've been not impressed because generally he has better pressure ratios than this. You do have to get pressure. Sacks are cool. They're great. They're more important, but you do have to get pressure, and TJ Watt just hasn't gotten pressure as well as most of these top-tier edge rushers, and pressures do matter a lot to me. You need to make sure the quarterbacks are under consistent hell, and the problem is if he's on a different team where you don't have Highsmith dominating around the edge, sure, he's not going to get chipped as much, but he's just not going to make as much of an impact because you need that constant pressure. It's also a factor of it will be that Pittsburgh has not blitzed as much, so he's not going to get pressure from there as much. But TJ, you know what? Maybe I'm already regretting my decision to keep him off, but I'm going to stand strong. As you said, he's great in the run game. But Myles Garrett is the clear number 1, though, in my opinion. 11 sacks, 63 pressure rates, 19.3%. 63 pressures, 19.3% pressure rate, which is his career high. Defensive Player of the Year last year, definitely in the conversation this year. There's nobody better.
31.1% true pass set win rate is second in the NFL. This is going to test your ball knowledge. Do you know who number 1 is? Think outside the box here.
In true pass sets, let's
think low sample size.
Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
he would be. So I kept anybody who has a season-ending injury off the list. I know Hutchinson's isn't technically season-ending, but he's not going to be ready for the Pro Bowl.
I kept Aiden Hutchinson off as well, and it's just like, in my notes I have written down for my honorable mentions, fuck, man, what could have been.
This was his year. We're not to the NFC yet, but this was his year, and it's really sad.
We'll get there. It is sad. Myles Garrett is probably the most dominant edge player in the NFL. 28 quick pressures is third. His quick pressure percentage is easily first. And number one double team rate in the NFL. If you want to break out the analytics, everybody talks about Myles Garrett's hurries and mysterious pressures that don't turn into sacks. He's been extremely productive in terms of sacks and forced fumbles this year as well. He's surely a dominant player. I think he's my defensive player of the year pick, but I know Surtain exists. We'll get to him.
We will get to him later. Spoiler alert, he might be on the AFC Pro Bowl list, but at their end of the season year awards, I'm really excited for those end of the season awards, the Balls Talk Awards show, but we will get to that in time. But Myles Garrett is just so dominant. Who's your number 2?
No, it's Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah,
It's got to be for you, right? He's the most productive edge rusher in the NFL.
Absolutely. The one shining spot on Cincinnati's defense this year. Leads the league in sacks, is second in the league in pressures with 19.2% pressure rate. He's accounted for 32% of the Bengals' pressure in the season.
I'm surprised it's not higher because they're absolutely pathetic along the defensive line. And not only is he productive, like you can make the same argument about Max Crosby, who just missed the cut for me. I really wanted to get him in.
That's fair.
But Hendrickson is still efficient while doing that. He's having a really special season.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that's the highest pressure share in the league. Nobody gets more of his team's pressure than Trey Hendrickson.
That is not remotely surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, Trey, he's just... And you know what? Is he the best edge in the league? No, but productivity matters, and he's definitely one of the best edges in the league. So he's number 2, just a freak, and he's doing all this while there's no consistent number 2 threat on Cincinnati. So you can chip Trey as much as you want. You can put him. You can try to maneuver him onto your best guy. It just doesn't matter. He's gonna get his.
Does Sam Hubbard have a pressure this year?
Well, I don't know. I think between him and Joseph Osai, they've managed to accumulate 1, surely.
Maybe a half each.
Yeah, I think that'll do
like
it.
the quarterback saw them and took a step in the other direction.
I think at some point the stat guy had to be just like, okay, let's just give him 1. Surely that can count. That can count. All right.
Who's your number 4?
Well, my number 3.
Oh yeah. Who's your number 3?
Is Danielle Hunter.
He didn't make it for me.
I get it.
He was close.
But what did it for me? Stats don't matter. I get it. What matters is what you put on tape. But when you have 11 more pressures than the next best guy in the league, that's got to mean something at some point. Danielle Hunter has 81 pressures on the season. That is the most through 14 weeks since 2018. Got 10.5 sacks. He's being helped out. He's got Will Anderson on the other side, so he gets a lot of one-on-ones. Sure, that helps. You still got to win those one-on-ones. It's not easy to win a one-on-one against an NFL offensive tackle. It's not easy to do that.
He's got no help on the interior.
He is the only guy I have ever seen consistently win reps against Penei Sewell. He's the only guy I've ever seen do that since Penei's rookie season. And my biggest worry with Danielle is, like, this is going to tell me a lot about him, is once Will Anderson is out, because he missed a few games there, is he going to keep up this insane production? He did. He kept going as the number 1 edge with nobody. I think it was Dylan Horton playing, maybe. I can't remember, because there just wasn't that much pressure coming from the other side. It was just from him, and he was still making him hurt. He made Detroit's offensive line look silly. He beat Decker more than he beat Sewell, and he beat Sewell a decent amount. Hunter's been incredible, and I think he deserves his. He's making the Vikings regret letting him go, even though the Vikings don't regret it, because we'll get to why they might not regret it in the NFC section. But Danielle Hunter, he's just having a career year. He's having one of the best statistical edge rusher seasons we've seen in a while, and I feel like that warrants a Pro Bowl spot.
It's really tough to argue with that. You're almost swinging me, because my number 4 is Greg Rousseau.
Oh, I love that. He missed my list, but I love that.
He's a pressure accumulator. He's 6th in the league. He's been effective in true pass rush situations, and I think that really is the biggest difference. He's not just a power guy. He's not just a guy with a little bit of sneaky speed who can bend around the corner. He's developing his arsenal of pass rush moves. But what really did it for me is the run defense. 0.2 average depth of tackle is 6th in the league, and like the 5 guys that are higher than him are like splash play run defender types. That's what put him over the edge, is he is the best run defender in this group, maybe even above TJ Watt.
Yeah, I mean, he's ridiculous, man. It's insane. The thing that kept him off this list was the inconsistency.
I get it.
He'll disappear one game, and then he'll come back amazing the next. So that was what left him off. But Greg Rousseau at his best this season has been fun to watch, especially like when Von Miller got suspended. He was still showing up for work, and he was doing it. So him and Miller off the edge have been a spectacle. My number 4, it's Khalil Mack.
He's my 5. He's an alt.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's Khalil Mack, and you know what? I know I just talked. You got to get pressures, and he only has 3 more pressures than T.J. Watt. I'll recognize that. I will recognize that. But T.J. Watt has a 10% pressure rate. Khalil Mack is a 16% pressure rate. Pressure rate is arguably more important because how efficient are you when you have these chances on the field? You know what I mean? So TJ Watt has been good, but he's also had 125 more pass rush snaps than Khalil Mack has. Khalil Mack, they've been doing a lot more rotation of edge rushers in there. So, but when he's been their number 1, and when he's been in, he has been very hard to block. And it's not just that, he's so efficient when he's in the game. He just obliterates offensive tackles. But the way Minter uses him, the way that he's opened up so much in terms of the rest of the team's pressure, because you have to pay so much attention to him. And in the run game, he's been excellent as well. So
he's a problem. It's actually the run defense is the fundamental reason why he's an alternate for me, and why he wasn't just on the bubble with the honorable mentions. He really opens things up with the Chargers. He lets them play light in the box. He lets them run kind of a unique defensive system. And he's got 4 passes batted down. He just impacts every phase of the game. I think Khalil Mack is one of the rare players who almost has negative name value. Like, people see Khalil Mack on the Chargers and think, he's washed. He's not washed.
No, he is not. And he's getting better somehow still. I don't know, man. Khalil Mack, I feel like he deserved it. I feel bad keeping T.J. Watt off. I feel like this is just going to further the idea that I'm a T.J. Watt hater. Because, I did like Myles Garrett for Defensive Player of the Year over Watt last year. I've always liked Garrett better than Watt, but Watt's a really talented player, really good. This isn't his year to make the Pro Bowl. Khalil Mack deserved it, so I gave it to him.
Shout out Max Crosby, who's just battling through injury to be one of the only decent pieces on that Raiders defensive line. And even Jonathan Cooper's accumulated a lot of pressures, but he gets schemed up more than other guys do. Still having a really nice season.
Yeah, Broncos country we love to talk about. Let's get Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper in the Pro Bowl. Nick Bonito is number 2 in sacks in football. It's impressive, but
he's on my list.
A lot of these are schemed up pressures, and when you actually look at how well they're doing in true pass sets, one-on-ones, when they're running against actual regular looks, and when it's not schemed up, it's not as good as these guys. It's still good. They both deserve their money. Bonito will get paid at the end of the season. Cooper already got paid, but they're not quite as good as in this echelon of tier.
Now, things are a little cloudier in the NFC. I don't feel great about my number 1, but he's just so efficient I couldn't leave him off. It's Micah Parsons.
He just missed it for me.
I understand he's missed some time. I question how much his heart is in it. To backtrack just a little bit, when we had that Amon-Ra St. Brown conversation and I had to shuffle things around, I talked about JSN. CeeDee Lamb would actually be above JSN for me just because he is the entire Cowboys offense. He's dropped a lot of passes. I feel like Micah Parsons kind of has the same thing. It's like, how checked in can you be? How much are you going to put your body on the line every single play? He's still the most efficient edge rusher in the NFC by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, he's got a 19% pressure rate, 53 pressures on the season, 6.5 sacks. He's really good, and he's doing all this, and he's clearly not trying, and I don't blame him. This is a disaster of a season for the Cowboys, and he's been coming under fire in social media. People have not been treating him well, so I don't blame you checking out here. Same with CD, but I do feel like other guys deserved it just a little bit more than he did, especially because he's only played in 9 games this season, and I don't feel like he's been as dominant enough to compensate for missing 5 games.
Understandable. Now, with Micah Parsons gone, I think I can guess your 3. Or do you have 4?
I have 4. But, we can just go 3 because I don't feel like there's 4 guys who necessarily deserve it. But, we can go 4. We can go 4.
Jared Verse
is not my number 1. He's my number 2.
Jonathan Grenard.
He's my number 3.
Nick Bosa
is my number 1. I still love Nick Bosa, man. He's just so good. I know the Niners haven't been fantastic on defense. I don't think that's necessarily his fault. Questionable decisions off the field aside, he is just a damn good football player. And He's a super athlete. He's got the quickest get off in the league on average, 0.69 seconds. You know what I mean? He's 7 sacks on the season, but also he pairs that with a 16% pressure rate. Insane stat. The Niners have plus 5.6% more pressure rate on the season when he's on the field, plus 4.3% sack rate when he's on the field, and 14.4% less completion rate when he's on the field. He just makes a difference when he's on the field, and he is a fantastic player. He is always felt, maybe has his bad moments. He'll get beat a couple of times, but when it matters, it seems like he's always there.
He's a true technician. That's what really sticks out to me most about Bosa. 27.3 true pass set win rate is 4th in the NFL. The run defense hasn't necessarily been elite, but that doesn't matter when you're as good at getting to the quarterback and generating pressure as Nick Bosa is. A real sack artist as well. Just knows how to get into the backfield. A different style of player, Jonathan Grenard, 60 total pressures, 2nd in the NFL.
Oh, he's nasty. He is so good. I have him at 3 below Verse just because I feel like that's the kind of the similar to the thing to the Broncos defense where a decent amount of that is schemed up.
Yeah.
But I think he deserves a little bit more credit because Van Ginkel's gotten most of the schemed up stuff. He's had to do a little bit more of the one-on-one, the direct wins.
Badger.
Yeah. Grenard, 10 sacks on the season, like you said. He's been really good. He's been their number one. And as I said, is like Hunter's going to try and make the Vikings regret letting him go. I don't think they really do because Grenard's filled his shoes really, really well. He's very good. He can get around the edge well. Not the most powerful guy, but that's not what you got him for. So.
And he really fits the Vikings scheme in that he's surprisingly good at containing the perimeter. The Vikings have been excellent on outside runs this year, and while a lot of his pass rush production is schemed up, and so you have to take that into account, I kind of think we see the opposite with run defense, where with some of the fronts he's playing from, he shouldn't be near as effective containing the edge as he is. Another really good edge setter, Jared Verse, 21 run stops, 6th in the NFL.
That's also the most from an edge. So he's been a freak at setting the edge consistently. And this is what I liked about him. He's just so strong. And that bull rush is just so nasty. 59 pressures on the season, 17.5 pressure rate. That hasn't converted to sacks as much. But you know what? With the Rams, the defense has just been so weird this season. I don't think you can blame him for that. So Verse, just such an impressive rookie year, deserved a nod just because of how polished he looks immediately. And I understood people saying on the draft time, like, okay, maybe his finesse isn't as polished, but you know what?
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, when you're that good with power, it doesn't matter if you can hit him with a cross chop. When you can just run through a guy's chest, and he's showing, well, would that transfer? Yeah, it did. He can just run through NFL lineman's chest. He's just going to make you regret being born. Jared versus a Pro Bowler as a rookie. Looks like the odds-on favorite to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, too.
One guy I really wanted to get in is Yaya Diaby, who's taken a big step up, 0.5 average depth of tackle. It's really the run defense for me. He has a lot of Greg Rousseau in him, where he's a very effective power rusher, consistently maybe in that tier 2 to tier 3 of pressure generation. But on a Buccaneers defense that's been really underwhelming, he has been one of the big bright spots. I think we're going to get to another one of those big bright spots in about a minute here.
Oh, I think so too.
Interior defensive line in the NFC?
I think we will. One guy I want to call out before we get to him.
Go ahead.
Brian Burns has been very good in a very lifeless Giants defense. He could have checked out. He got his money. He could have checked out. He didn't. Every week he's out there. He's putting up numbers. He's doing really good things. I believe, I think, especially with Sexy Dexy out, man, he's just been still putting up numbers.
He's picked up a lot of the slack for Thibodeau.
Absolutely. But yeah, let's go to NFC interiors. And yeah, you have Vea. I have Vea.
Vea's not my number one, though.
He is not my number one either. Who's your number one?
Well, it's Dexter Lawrence, of course.
Fair. As I said, I had to keep Dexter off because I wanted to. If you have a season-ending injury, you're not going to be able to play in the Pro Bowl, so we're going to keep you off. My number one is Leonard Williams.
How many interior defensive linemen did you pick?
3.
Williams doesn't make it for me then.
Ooh.
He's super versatile. He's good in both phases. I have Dexter Lawrence, Vita Vea, Jalen Carter.
Carter did not make it for me. I get it. He was 4.
I think he leads the NFL in interior defensive line snaps. Remember those stamina concerns? Just the way he consistently impacts the game is what did it for me in both phases.
I get it. Ultimately, I just there's still that inconsistency factor with him, and it's too much. There's like if you're inconsistent, that's fine. There's certain levels to inconsistency, and I think he just gets a little bit too high for me versus the three guys that I have on this. I value consistency from the interior defensive line spot so much because if you make a mistake there, that in the run defense, you're going to get gashed for at least 10 yards. It's just what's going to happen. So Carter just missed the list for me because his highs are as high as anybody in the league, but his lows are too low for a Pro Bowler for me. But he did just barely miss it. Leonard Williams, he's been the epitome of consistency this year. He's been one of the most effective pass rushers from the interior spot, 11% pressure rate, 7 sacks on 36 pressures. So impressive. And on the Seahawks defensive line, where a lot of things just couldn't be figured out early in the season, Mike McDonald was having trouble. He was a consistent part. He was always making those plays, and especially in the run game, he was just so solid. But he made my number one. I recognize that was a little bit out there, but I wanted to give him credit.
I mean, he was my 4. It's not like that's some crazy take, in my opinion. He is a major chess piece on that McDonald defensive line, and I think unlocking Leonard Williams is a big part of the defensive resurgence we've seen from the Seahawks. Do you want to talk about Vita Vea?
I do.
He's really excellent at run defense and at pass rushing, just a deadly pocket pusher.
He's so good. I mean, 6 sacks and 34 pressures, both are second in his career, both metrics. 10% pressure rate, that's really good. You want to know how good of a run defender Vita Vea is? Whenever he's on the field, opposing running backs average a whole yard less per carry. He is that freaky, man. He just pushes guys. You can try and stop him. You're not going to succeed.
That yard is actually just after the running back goes down at the end of the play, Vea picks him up and puts him a yard back farther.
And because also it's like the refs can't do anything about it. What are you going to do? You're going to tell him he's wrong? All 6 foot, 350 pounds of him? I'm not going to tell him he's wrong. All right, well, he was down there. All right, I'll take it.
In all seriousness, his juice as a pass rusher is just so unique for a nose tackle.
Yeah, he's the epitome of every time I see a 6'4", 364 defensive tackle who kind of has a pass rush plan. He's like, you remember Siaki Ika?
Yes, Siaki Ika is who came to mind.
Yes, the Balls Talk Sports, great minds think alike. If you thought of Siaki Ika, you are true sick, and stick around, of course. If you stuck around this far, yes. Siaki, but it was like every time I see a guy like Siaki, he was like, yeah, he's gonna become Vita Vea, surely. But they never do because Vita Vea is 1 in a million. He's just so good.
Dexter Lawrence, I don't need to spend a lot of time on. He is a game wrecker, probably a top 10 player in the NFL. It's tragic he went down for the year, especially in what is the season equivalent of garbage time. Just brutal. Hope he healthy's up in a hurry.
I think he's better than Chris Jones. It's really close. He would have been my number 1. You can make the argument for Chris Jones. I'm not going to disagree. I'm just saying I think he's just a little bit better than Chris Jones. It's such a shame he went down. He's so good. My number 3, who's your number 3? Did we cover that?
Dexy, Vea, Carter.
Yeah. So my number 3 is going to be Kobe Turner.
He's 5. Understandable.
Yeah, the conductor,
The role that he plays between him and Braden Fisk, where Braden Fisk is getting all the sack production. Braden Fisk's win rate is like really bad, not just for a pass rushing defensive tackle, it's all stunts. And Kobe Turner is here as the penetrator, freeing stuff up, defending the run. It's not even fair, man.
You talked about Aaron Brewer, right? As just a really weird player as far as he's 285, but he's mucking it up in the run game. Kobe Turner's the defensive equivalent of that. He's like 290, I think. Maybe he got up to 300 whenever he got into the league. But he's got 46 run stops in the season. Now, we have run stops are a really weird stat because a lot of different we both use different kinds of various platforms to find those. They'll vary, but that is second among defensive linemen in the league. All of them.
For anyone who's uninitiated, a stop is supposed to be a tackle that's a failure for the offense. I think most of the time that's off of a successful play, which is like,
I believe so.
I think it's 5 on first, 7 on second, all of the required yardage on third and fourth.
Yeah, I think that is it. But a stop is a good thing. Why don't we just say that? They made
Yes.
a positive play in the run defense, and he's got 46, though, second among defensive linemen, second only to a guy that we will all but surely get to in the AFC conversation. But you know what? He pairs that with 5 sacks, 10% pressure rate. Reason I said Aaron Brewer, he's getting double teamed 51% of his plays. That is top 10 in the league. He's 290. He's taking it like a champ. And guess what? He's got 16 pressures when he's double teamed. There's nobody who has more pressures when they're double teamed. He's top 10 in percent of double teamed. Nobody gets pressure more than when he's double teamed. So he's winning. He's not getting these schemed up wins like Braden Fisk is. He's getting no help. They are asking him to do everything, and he is delivering with flying colors. Him and Verse have just been the lifeblood of this Rams defensive line, and I wanted to credit him because he's also he's one of the smarter defensive linemen in the league as far as just for a smarter younger defensive lineman in the league as far as just seeing what's coming his way and just his timing to try and shed the block is really impressive. The way that he just can identify run schemes is really nice. Did in college, he transferred to the NFL, so Turner makes my Pro Bowl list.
Not going to argue with you on that one. I do, before we move on, want to shout out Lee McNeil.
Yeah.
Stepped up in a big way
Yes,
with
sir.
Hutchinson down.
Absolutely. He's been fantastic as a pass rusher with it. I mean, he's always been pretty good as a run defender, but the pass rushing has taken a step forward.
So now we'll pivot to the AFC, and who are your 1 and 2, and why are they Chris Jones and Cam Hayward?
It's unfair, the AFC. There's so many. I think I looked at it. There was like 7 guys that I thought deserved to be here. But yeah, my number 1 and number 2 are Chris Jones and Cam Hayward. They're really good. I don't think we need to talk about how good Chris Jones is too much. You know, he's just been Chris Jones this season.
He wrecks both phases.
47 pressures, 22 quick pressures, which, again, for the uninitiated, a pressure that happens within 3 seconds of the snap. And both of those are second among all interior defensive linemen. Got 5 sacks in the season. Run game, he's unstoppable. He just moves guys. The swim move is, I mean,
Self-explanatory.
yeah, it's unbeatable. And then you got Cam Hayward. I mean,
He's having a career resurgence at what age? Like
35.
35?
Yeah, he's 35, and it's not even a career resurgence. I mean, maybe. He was this good for a long time, and then he got a little worse over the last 2 years, and he's like, okay, I'm back. 47 stops, first among defensive linemen. That means that he has had the most positive run defense plays in football.
He's all right as a pass rusher, too.
Yeah, 8 sacks, not a bad number at all. And it's not just the sacks. He gets pressure a lot. I mean, he moves guys, and he's opened up. There's a reason Keanu Benton looks impressive statistically. It's because Cam Hayward he's getting double teamed, he's getting triple teamed. You know what I mean? They're putting everybody on it. They're putting all 5 guys on him, and they're just letting TJ. That's why Highsmith's pressure rate is so high. That's why Herbig's pressure rate is so high, because they're just putting all 5 guys on Cam Hayward, and they're putting a couple of tight ends on Watt and Highsmith.
Couple of really good Badgers in that conversation. Now, who's your number 3?
I battled back and forth. There were so many guys. Before I say my number 3, I just want to give credit to how many talented interior defensive linemen there are in the AFC. We got guys, Nnamdi Madubuike, Quinnen Williams, Poona Ford, Jeffrey Simmons, Calais Campbell, Zach Allen, Denver Broncos stud. All of those guys probably make it in a normal year. But, well, I don't know. But all of them really good seasons. None of them have been as dominant and truly game-wrecking as DeForest Buckner has been.
He is on a mission since he has been back from IR.
And the only reason it wasn't clear-cut as 3 is because he missed that time.
Exactly. If he sustained this level of production for the entire season, he would be above Chris Jones. And that is absolutely wild. He's been very good as a run defender, as a pass rusher, essentially unprecedented numbers in terms of efficiency. I don't think anyone wants to see the Colts in the playoffs more than DeForest Buckner does.
I really don't want to see the Colts in the playoffs.
Neither do I, but DeForest Buckner does.
Yeah, he really does. And I talked about, I think it was somebody, but it was like, second among defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen with like a 11.9% pressure rate. Really damn good. DeForest Buckner's got a 14% pressure rate.
I thought it was higher than that.
He's just a freak. It's a lot harder to get pressure from the interior than it is from the edge. So 14% it's really hard to do. And he's also got 5.5 sacks on 9 games. And also in the run game, just not getting past him. it's a shame he hasn't been able to play this whole time because he's probably got an all-pro campaign going if he has. But they're probably not because there's just so many talented interior guys this year. But DeForest is a true game wrecker in every sense of the word.
All right, so we'll stick in the AFC and go to our off-ball linebackers. This is kind of not an easy conversation for me.
Yeah, I'm curious to see because we're not going to have the same guys. There's very little chance we do, but I'm curious to see who you have. Number 1.
Diane Henley?
Number 1 for me as well.
Oh my God. It's slim pickings.
It is, and it should be Roquan Smith, but it's not, and it's his own fault. He's on this list for me.
Me too.
But it's his own fault that he's not number 1. This is the easiest year to be the number 1 linebacker in the AFC, and Roquan Smith doesn't want it. Seems like he's been a good linebacker, but just hasn't been elite.
He hasn't had the same pass coverage consistency. He still played a big role in their run defense. I think
That's why he's on the list for me.
He's punched out a couple of fumbles, but been caught out of position a little bit too much. He's contributed to the Ravens' issues defending the intermediate to deep pass more than he's helped with them. Again, he did still make it. He's my 3. Diane Henley, he's kind of been the opposite of that. Really sound in pass coverage, a solid body against the run. Just lets the Chargers do exactly what they want to do every play.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I talked about this in a prediction episode, and I watched him again because I was trying to decide between him and Roquan for my number 1 spot. And I was just like, man, this guy reminds me of Fred Warner if Fred Warner was just a little worse at football. Because he's got that.
That's a great comp.
He's got those athletic earmarks of just being able to go anywhere in the field you want to. When I see him tackle, it just looks like Fred Warner. Speaking of tackling, he's top 10 in missed tackle rates. Only 9% of his tackles get past him. 117 tackles on the season overall. You know what? He's been great as pass coverage. He's also been great as a blitzer. 20% pressure rate. And for linebackers, that number is kind of inflated versus IDLs. It's deflated. That number's inflated. Still an impressive number to put out. Henley, second year. Loved him coming into Washington State. So glad to see him making this jump. I think the question is, who's 3?
Who's your 3 and where did he go to college?
I'm pretty sure I know where he went to college, and I know why you would. I know why you would bring this up.
Yes, you do.
Oh yeah, you know what? We got the Badger.
Leo Chenal.
We got Leo Chenal
breaking out.
Yeah.
Not going to be the only Badger on this linebacker list.
No, he will not. Leo Chenal, I don't think he should be a Pro Bowler, but the linebackers here. It's not because he hasn't been good. In coverage, he's been a little inconsistent. He just doesn't play the snaps, you know. But still, there's not many great guys. I think my 4 ended up being Devin Lloyd, maybe.
Devin Lloyd was my 4, too.
Yeah.
Seriously, man? 4 for 4?
Linebackers, we've got a good... Who's your 5?
I don't have a 5 written down.
Okay.
Who's your 5?
Honestly, I'm just trying. I think it was Logan Wilson, but he did not deserve to be 5.
Agreed.
He's been... But there's the linebacker, it falls off real quickly. But yeah, Chenal, he makes this list because of how effective he is as a blitzer for me.
Yeah.
And how just utterly fantastic he is as a run defender. It's so much that, like, I don't care as much about some of the inconsistencies in his past defense game. In the intermediate, he's all right. He's just never. I don't think he's ever going to be that elite. He's not going to be able to stick on your slot consistently. He's not going to be able to cover the elite tight ends.
He definitely plays downhill, but that's okay with what the Chiefs want to do. When you've got a
exactly.
Trent McDuffie, when you have sticky coverage players, you can have a Leo Chenal who plays top down and wrecks everything in front of him.
He fits perfectly with what they want to do. So this is one where the situation helps him, and I'm not going to punish him for playing well in not playing to the situation that he's in. So Chenal gets the 3rd spot. He definitely doesn't get it in the NFC, but this is the AFC. There are conference differences across the board. AFC has some strength that NFC doesn't. NFC has some strength that the AFC doesn't. Luckily, this isn't the NBA where one conference is just wholly better than the other. I mean, this is the NFL. We take stuff seriously over here.
Exactly. All right, now we'll pivot to the NFC where I think number one's a little bit more clear cut,
Oh,
right?
I don't know
right?
about this one. I don't know about. No, yeah, it's Fred Warner.
It's not that obvious. Zach Baun's been
He's
really
made
efficient.
it competitive.
He's been flying around.
Yeah, but we'll talk about Bond in a second. But Warner, he might be the best player in football.
I don't think I'd go that far.
Yeah, okay, he's the best. He might be the best run defending linebacker in football.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Pass
Yes.
defense. There's been a crack in his armor. But for Fred Warner's standards, though, he's still been a great pass defender. It's just Fred Warner standards are be the best pass defending linebacker of all time, and he hasn't been that. I think it's also just the fact that the 49ers have had a weaker secondary than this year than they normally do. They're asking more of him, and he is a linebacker. He can't cover elite receivers, or can he? Or can he? Because look at this stat. Let me find it real quick. Sorry. He's got the lowest EPA allowed when covering wide receivers for linebackers. So he's also got 2 interceptions when covering wide receivers. So yeah, he can cover a wide receiver. Warner just does everything very well.
To quote Aaron Rodgers, a down year for Fred Warner in pass coverage is a career year for 90% of the NFL's linebackers. This was a pretty easy pick for me.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about how good Zach Baun is in a second. You said it. This is a down year for Fred Warner in coverage, and we still have Warner as number 1 above Zach Baun, who's having one of the better career years we've ever seen, and one of the best breakout years we've ever seen from a linebacker.
All right, so I said I had a Badger as my second linebacker. Let's talk about Jack Sanborn.
It's number 2. Okay, let's talk about it.
All right, let's talk about Zach
out.
Baun. He's been flying around at the second level for the Eagles.
I actually like Sanborn this year. He didn't make my list.
Oh, no, he wasn't even an honorable mention for me. But
he wasn't. But he made my when I gather my master list of guys that I want to at least consider. Sanborn was on it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean he's had his issues, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anybody.
Better than Tremaine Edmonds.
Well,
somehow.
Yeah.
Baun is just such a fun linebacker. Fred Warner is so good, but Baun might be even more fun of a player because he's so effective as a blitzer. Just embodies the phrase flying all over the place in coverage and run defense. He's just been so consistent. He's unlocked a new level of consistency while playing at that speed as well. It's been really impressive. I remember week 1 against the Packers in Brazil. Starting off the NFL season, he immediately made his presence felt. He has not eased up since then.
No, I mean, it was over the offseason, a switch flipped. He just became an elite linebacker overnight because, I think this is his 3rd year in the league, 3rd year?
4th, maybe?
Yeah, but, the first 3 years he didn't play as much, but he wasn't good when he played. This year, he's an elite linebacker. Stuff happens. But, he's been truly incredible this year. When you look at it, he's got the lowest coverage EPA allowed for all linebackers. Now, EPA is kind of a weird stat. You don't want to take it at face value for a lot of people, but for that definitely is a good stat. You know what I mean? So, Baun has been really, really hard to shake in coverage in the run game. He has been consistent in filling the gaps, making the tackles. You're not going to get past him consistently, and he's going to blitz well. So he's been everything the Eagles could have hoped.
5th-year breakout, and I think he's done a lot for Nakobe Dean's development as well.
Absolutely. Dean's looked better, definitely, in part because of Baun's breakout.
Now, I'm interested to know who your 3rd man in the linebacker room is.
This was tough because there's a guy I really like here, and I ended up going with him, Blake Cashman. And I just, this hasn't been his best year. It wasn't as good as last year, but I still think it's good. And overall, the linebacker depth in the NFC isn't exactly fantastic. The linebacker depth in the league isn't exactly fantastic. I was torn between him and Wagner. I really was. I went with Cashman.
I went with Wagner.
And I don't blame you. Bobby Wagner's been one of the best run-defending linebackers in football. I just think I like Cashman a little bit more in dropping back into coverage and blitzing.
The pass coverage isn't really there for Bobby Wagner anymore. He's still smart, don't get me wrong. One of the true veteran players in the NFL. The Harrison Smith of linebackers, you could say. He's just so good in run defense. Coming at you from post-production, Bobby Wagner, who plays for the Washington Commanders, is very good at tackling people.
He's one of the best in the league. You just can't get past him, and that's what the experience really shows for him. That's what Washington needed in this linebacker room. They've been rolling out a lot of young cores in recent years, and they needed a guy to really just come in and teach these guys how to play the linebacker position at an elite mental level, because he functions mentally better than almost any linebacker in football, sans Fred Warner. So Bobby Wagner, he just knows what he's seeing on every play. He's seen it all, and he knows how to apply that tackles, to run stops, to good blitzes. In the pass game, he knows what he's seeing, and he's going to be able to stop it, but sometimes he can see it, but his athleticism just can't get him there in time, and that's where the issue comes in, and that's why I left him off for the younger and a little bit more athletic Blake Cashman.
All right. So are we in the NFC or the AFC?
The NFC. I've got.
This is interesting.
I've got an insane one here.
Cornerbacks, right? Who's your first guy?
So my first guy is going to be Kenyon Mitchell. And it's weird because I don't think there's that elite corner. I thought it was Jalen Johnson. He's great. Tier 2. I don't think he's Tier 1. I think Kenyon's Tier 2 as well. Kenyon Mitchell, man, there's just something about the way he moves that he's sticky. He's just so hard to beat, and he's doing all of this. He's locking guys up. I can't remember. There was some insane stat where he's allowed an average of 20 yards over the last 8 games, and he's doing all this, and he's taking the number 1 receiver that the other team's throwing at him. I think he lined up on Zay Flowers a lot against Baltimore, and Zay Flowers was nowhere to be found. Kenyon Mitchell has been fantastic, and a big reason why this defense has been rebounded.
25% forced incompletion rate, tied for second in the NFL.
Yeah,
He's been really exceptional. He's my second guy. It was close between him and Jalen Johnson. I did go with Johnson because I think he's more of a shutdown corner.
Fair.
18.5 snaps per reception, third best in the NFL. And he's done it with only 2 penalties, at least in coverage, because we know that my ability to assess penalties looking through databases might be a little bit suspect. But Jalen Johnson, has he been quite as elite as last year? Not necessarily. Still having a really strong season when everything else in the Bears secondary is inconsistent, to say the least.
To be a number 2 corner in a Pro Bowl is incredibly difficult. Jalen Johnson is still a very good corner. And yeah, we talk about how good the Bears secondary is statistically. That is a Jalen Johnson stat. The rest of it has been suspect, and he is just locked down consistently. The only thing is, against the best receivers, he will show cracks in his armor, and a little bit more than you'd like to see, and that's what ultimately put Kenyon over him. Weirdly enough, it's just that Kenyon hasn't really faced Justin Jefferson yet. He hasn't played Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson got the best of Jalen Johnson a few times. If Justin Jefferson lined up against Kenyon next week and he fried him, Jalen Johnson probably takes this list, because Justin Jefferson would probably fry Kenyon Mitchell.
Quinyon did play Puka Nacua, though.
He did, yeah.
He did play Jamar Chase.
Did he play Jamar Chase?
Yep.
Well, okay. That was...
The game scripts made things complicated for the opposing teams.
That Jamar Chase game was... That wasn't when Kenyon... That was the first game that Kenyon really looks like himself, and that game from Cincinnati was the weirdest Cincinnati game of the season.
So he broke out against Jamar Chase.
Maybe. So I have him as my number 1. You have him as my number 2. Why are you being...
Anyway, my number 3 is Zion McCollum, and this was really difficult for me. What put him over the top is he's played 553 coverage snaps, which is second, and when you live in coverage, it's just really hard to be consistently sticky. He still has been. 13.9 snaps per reception is really solid. He's forced plenty of incompletions. I don't feel like there's anyone he can't match up against because he has the burner speed. He's shown that he can get a hand in there and be physical. There were a handful of guys I considered, but ultimately I did like McCollum the best.
I like McCollum. He was my 4 for outside corners because I had 3 outside corner spots and a nickel slot. Murphy made it over. And I get it. The picks are inflating some of those stats.
You only look at interceptions.
Yeah, I only look at interceptions. That's why I've got McKinney and Joseph as my safeties for the NFC, which maybe we'll see if I do later. But Murphy has been... he's been an interception machine this year. And outside of that, there's this weird kind of thing where you see a guy with a bunch of interceptions, and then you see him get the number 1 votes for a corner in the Pro Bowl. You're like, okay, he must not be that good. People are just looking at interceptions. This is Trayvon Diggs. This is Duron Bland. I don't think it is. I don't think he's as good as those interception numbers say he is. I do think he's very good, though. He's got an 18% tight window percentage. That's impressive. All right, that means 18% of the time there's less than 1 yard of separation between him and the receiver. He's also played 521 coverage snaps. I think that's about the same McCollum had. So he's a lot of yards, but he's lived in coverage, and the Vikings secondary has not been giving him much help. So he's in a secondary with Stephon Gilmore, and he's been the better player. They're asking a lot of him, and I like what I've seen.
You mentioned how he's played so many coverage snaps. He really has been a huge part of the Minnesota defense. And playing that snaps, you talked about the tight window percentage. There are times where he gambles and loses. That's going to happen. He's going to battle for those forced incompletions, for those key turnovers. I think he's top 10 in yards allowed. It happens. He's playing an extremely difficult role in a defense that really likes to blitz at times. I 100% understand. A guy who is hard for me to leave off is Darius Slay.
He wasn't hard for me.
He's old and he gives up yardage. But, man, the ball production.
Big play Slay.
Big play Slay.
But, yeah, Slay, I mean, part of the reason why it wasn't hard for me to leave him off is because I feel no guilt because he's not been a good presence in the locker room for the Eagles this year.
Okay,
so
yeah.
That doesn't affect my Pro Bowl votes at all. But, Slay's taken a step back. He's gotten beat a few times. But Murphy, he's not getting beat the same way Murphy is. I like the ways that Murphy's getting beat. They're not every way.
Murphy's been good in coverage.
He's taken a shot, and the Vikings play a very high-risk, high-reward style of football. He fits that perfectly. I guarantee you Flores sees him doing this, and he's saying, yeah, do that and more. I want you taking this shot. I want you to try and get the pick. If they beat you, okay, we can live with that. We got Cameron Bynum and Harrison Smith to clean up in the backside, and if Harrison is playing back, which is rare at this point in his career, but we got them to clean up. I want you to just try and make this play. You know what I mean? So Murphy did end up making it for me. Slay was, I think, not even numbered on my list.
One reason that I thought it would be funny to have Slay is because Cooper DeJean is my nickel defender, and I kind of just wanted the entire Eagles secondary.
That's fair. Cooper DeJean is not my nickel defender.
Who do you have? Witherspoon?
No. I actually want to see if you can guess.
Andrew Phillips?
No.
I think I'm out of guesses.
There is a nickel corner. There's a bad man in Arizona named Garrett Williams.
Wow, that's deep cut.
It is. I honestly did not expect this to be Garrett Williams. I looked at the stats, and I was like, well, these are a lot better than I thought they were. 18% tight window percentage. We talked about what that meant. When he's been targeted, 64 QBR. He has allowed 25 receptions for 216 yards. For reference, Patrick Surtain, I feel like you guys may have heard of him. He's allowed 200 yards on 21 receptions.
And it's harder when you play in the slot. You get targeted way more often.
You are going to get peppered. He's been targeted 45 times only. People don't want to attack these guys. They don't, okay? And it's Arizona, which makes this so much more impressive because Arizona has no semblance of a pass rush. These quarterbacks have all the time in the world to throw the football, and almost without fail, they are not throwing the ball at Garrett Williams. Okay, stats, they're fine. What about so I was like, yeah, stats are fine, but surely they can't be this good when you watch the game. It is. I watched a game and a half of Arizona Garrett Williams tape where I just looked at Garrett Williams the entire time. Nothing gets past this kid. I know I said kid and I'm 18 and he's like 24. I don't care. This man is insane. You put him, and it's like he's not getting help because the safeties and the corners in Arizona don't know how to play football. He's the only competent member of this secondary this year, and what Jonathan Gannon has asked him to do has been so much more than anybody could have expected from him this season. He's played outside on occasion. He's mostly played in the nickel. That's why he got my slot role. He has been very good at tackling. Guys just don't get past him. They just don't. And he's like 6 foot 189. He's a smaller guy. So for a smaller guy, he's real good at tackling. In man coverage, he's just so sticky. He gets in there a guy's hip pocket, and he stays with him. The worry that I had with him coming out of the draft was that he is a little small to be an outside corner, and I don't know if he has the agility to stay inside with a guy in the slot. And he's stuck with guys. He's better in zone though. He's better in zone. He can come down. He's reading these short routes very well. He comes down. He just hits guys. He makes plays on the ball. He's just such a sound player. There's not really a big flaw in his game. He's allowing 5 yards after the catch per reception, but from the slot, that's not bad. You know what I mean? That's not bad. He's in minus 16 coverage GPA. Garrett Williams is a Pro Bowler, and he needs a lot more coverage.
I love it. I think that's an excellent poll because those are legitimately great numbers, and playing in Arizona makes that so much more difficult. What if I told you that Cooper DeJean is that, but it also hit sticks Derrick Henry? You talk about watching tape. Did you watch this man lay out King Henry? He just stuck him and put him in the ground. I only watched the highlights. That is the only reason he made this list. But not exactly. He's got 16 pass stops, tied for 4th in the NFL. Slot defenders do tend to accumulate more of them, but 7.4 yards per reception is 3rd. Not a single missed tackle. I think that tackling is a really underrated part of slot corners' jobs. And I think he embodies the big nickel defender because he's a meaningful part of the Eagles' run fit. But he's been very sticky and heady in coverage as well.
He is so good, and it pained me deep to leave Cooper DeJean off this list. Ultimately, I was just like, you know what? This is one where I'm going to punish him for a little bit for the system because I think what they're doing, Garrett Williams and Cooper DeJean look not identical because they're different players, but as far as the product they've put on the field are both really impressive, about the same, but Garrett's doing it, in my opinion, in a tougher environment. So I gave it to him, but I think DeJean's the better run defender by far. You want to point to a weakness in Garrett Williams' game, it's probably the run defense. DeJean has been fantastic in run defense. He's also... You talk about yards after catch per reception. He's a great tackler. He's only allowing 4 yards after the catch per reception, which is an excellent number for a slot corner, and he sticks with guys. I do think in man, I think I'd give the edge to Garrett Williams because Cooper DeJean, he'll get beat on occasion. He's also a rookie. He's a rookie, and he excels in that cover 3 zone system. He was never going to be this man guy. And if he was going to be a man guy, you want him in press coverage. So if you're going to have him in off coverage in the slot, he's just not going to be that dominant, and he's excelled in that. So, yeah, DeJean, I have no issues with him as Pro Bowler.
It's wild that we're in a spot where Devin Witherspoon, having a solid season,
Doesn't even get consideration. He deserves it, though. Witherspoon's had a great season.
Badass run defender.
And honestly, if you're in a half decently consistent defense, he's probably in the Pro Bowl.
Now, did you want to stick with the NFC, finish it off, and go to the safeties in this conference?
I don't believe we talked about the corners. Oh, yeah, as far as DBs. Yeah, we can do that.
Do you have Kyle Hamilton as your number 1?
In the NFC?
Oh, my God. I switched him.
Did I miss a trade?
That would be a bold pick.
Oh yeah, these are the kind of we give bold takes on BallsTalkSports. We are predicting Kyle Hamilton is going to get traded to an NFC team by the end of the year. Therefore, he will be playing in the NFC side of the Pro Bowl.
I am very bad.
Is it AFC versus NFC?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. I am very bad at knowing which teams are in which divisions and somehow conferences. Kirby Joseph, your number 1?
Yeah, I mean. This is one where it's like, surely he's not that good. He probably hasn't been as good as his stats say, but he's still been pretty damn good.
As a Packers fan, I'm well aware.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I expected to like Kirby Joseph a lot less than what people were saying. I don't. He's got the lowest EPA in coverage in the league. He's only allowed 11 catches on the season as the nearest defender for 124 yards, no touchdowns. He's targeted at a rate of 6%. As far as tackling goes, he's an iron wall, 1.1 yards after the catch per reception. That's unheard of. He's allowed no touchdowns. He's picked off the ball 7 times, and it arguably gets better when you actually watch him play. Single high, he plays a lot of it, and he's just so rangy. Gets anywhere he wants. Yeah, it wasn't close.
when he picked off Aaron Rodgers twice in one game 2 years ago, we knew that there might be something there, and he's only continued to evolve. Probably the most complete safety in the NFL because he's a true ball hawk, but he's also so sound, both in pass coverage and in the run game. My second, staying in the NFC North, that's going to be a theme, isn't it?
Ooh,
Is
yeah.
Xavier McKinney for the
Yeah.
Packers. Probably maybe a slight leg up on Kirby Joseph as far as ball hawking, not the same player in run defense, but he's been fantastic for the Packers. I think the Packers have 2-3 fewer losses if they don't have McKinney's key turnovers, because it's not, the ball got popped up and fell into his hands. He's undercutting routes and making big instinctive plays and really maximizing what he has for athleticism.
Yeah, absolutely. Turnovers, while they may just be a few plays in a vast season, they do matter. And there's been a lot of plays where the Packers, I mean, they're up maybe 3, but the other team's driving, and they look like maybe they're going to get a touchdown. Xavier McKinney picks it off, and it just became a lot harder for the other team to win. So McKinney has been a difference maker, and you know what? It's not just the picks. In coverage, he's been a wall. I mean, he's just, as I said with Joseph, just very rangy. Can get anywhere on the field in an instant. He's got a quick trigger. He's just going to go downfield. I love the strides he's made in zone with his eyes. McKinney deserves a Pro Bowl spot, absolutely. Are we sticking in the NFC North again?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
It's Brian Branch. I considered having him as a big nickel type because the word that comes to mind describing him is just disruptive. He leads the league among safeties and forced incompletions. Just a master at getting his hands up into passing lanes. You can use him in so many different ways. Truly the best version of the player that we thought we might be getting when the Lions drafted him.
Now I sticked in the NFC North, but I went with Harrison Smith. No, I went with
Harrison
Brian
Smith is still a great tackler.
Hold on. I got to make sure of my list. He was my 5.
Who's your 4?
Bates.
Oh, I had Budda Baker.
Really? I didn't have Budda Baker that high. I had him like
He
7.
plays run defense. He doesn't really do anything else, but his run defense numbers are really nice.
It's impressive. There was actually, let's just shout out a couple of younger guys that have had a good season. Jair Brown,
Oh, yeah.
Kobe Bryant for the Seahawks.
He's there.
Yeah,
I like him. He's good.
Young player in my mind at least. Still, Justin Simmons.
Oh.
I still remember him being drafted.
Good
We
times.
deserve to get him a winning season. He's been really good. Sometimes.
Man, that whole Atlanta secondary.
Yeah, that's more on Atlanta than it was.
Agreed.
Yeah, but anyway, Brian Branch. Yeah, this is one where we just missed this in the draft. I mean, I don't know how you felt about him coming out, but I liked him. But he fell because of athleticism, despite the fact that he was probably the smartest player coming out of the draft in a long time. And this is one where people just missed. How did he fall to 42? He's so good. He's just so good at football.
He's always a step ahead.
Yeah, in the run game, he's a smaller guy, but it's all about effort when you're in the slot, when you're playing the linebacker, when you're coming down as a box safety, those kinds of positions. It's all about the effort that you put in. A lot more matters than your actual size, and Brian Branch puts in a lot of effort. Okay, and he leads the league. He leads safeties with 13 passes deflected. Kind of impressive. 25% tight window percentage. That's kind of impressive. 4 picks. That's kind of impressive. Moving all over the field. He's played 100 snaps of outside corner, slot corner, free safety, and strong safety. That's kind of impressive. Brian Branch is kind of an impressive player.
I would definitely say so. All right, and now we'll head back to the AFC to round out the show. Do you want to start with the cornerbacks?
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you lead this one off.
All right. So back in 2021, there was this guy by the name of George Payton who was hired for the Denver Broncos to be the general manager. And he got the 9th pick in the NFL draft, and Justin Fields fell into his lap. And he said, well, everyone wanted him to draft Justin Fields, myself included. Get the franchise quarterback. We don't have anybody. We haven't had anybody for so long. He stood his ground. He said, no, I'm going to pick the best corner in football for the next 10 years. And he did. He picked Patrick Surtain II. Patrick Surtain II is the best cornerback in football. He will be the best cornerback in football for a while if this continues. He has been the best cornerback in football for 2 years. I'm glad the sauce agenda is dead because, man, that went downhill quickly. Surtain, we've talked a lot about. I've thrown out a couple of tight window percentage numbers. Haven't I? Like anywhere from 18 to 25. Take a gander. What do you think his tight window percentage is?
All of them.
Yeah, it's 100%. What do you think his tight winner percentage is?
Oh man, I'm not super familiar with the stats, so I don't know like what the elite watermark would
Well,
be.
so
I'm gonna
generally
guess.
the top guys, I haven't seen anybody except for Surtain over 28%.
I'm gonna say because I have a nice stat on him as well. 12.3 snaps per target is.
Ooh.
It's second. I think one is like Samuel Womack.
But this is on targets.
Oh man, 45%.
No, it's 36. So you shot a little high. Yeah, 45% would be like Revis Island on crack. No, it's 36% of the time. This is the equivalent of blanket coverage on targets. So when he is targeted 36% of the time, he's blanketing guys. And he's doing this matching up against every number one. Here's an insane stat for you. You remember when Jerry Jeudy went for 235 yards?
Yes.
Yeah, so Patrick Surtain lined up on him 57% of the time on that game. He had 2 catches for 10 yards. Jerry Jeudy did all of that against fucking Levi Wallace on the other side. Patrick Surtain is a freak of nature. He's allowing 1.6 yards after the catch per reception from the outside corner slot. He's targeted a 10% rate. He's only allowed 200 yards in the season, 60 QB rating, 3 picks. He's insane. He's the best corner in football. And when it comes to man coverage, he's the best corner in football. When it comes to zone coverage, he's arguably the best corner in football, though you can look at other guys. He's unbeatable. He's the definition of a number 1 corner.
But he misses a bunch of tackles though, right?
Surely.
He has like more than 0.
Maybe.
He has 0.
Yeah, he has 0 missed tackles. There is no weak point to his game. He's a super athlete. He's massive. He is one of the smartest corners in football. He can play the ball. He can stick in your hip pocket. He can trigger from zone. What is there not to like about Surtain? He's generational. The word generational is tossed around a lot. Patrick Surtain is a generational talent.
He is a true shutdown corner in 2024.
He's
and
the
that
best
is
we've
exceedingly
seen since
rare.
He's the best shutdown corner we've seen since Revis.
Now, who do you have number 2? Because I have a player that I'm interested in that.
I think this
I
is
like to
clear
talk
cut.
about. Derek Stingley?
Yes.
He's not a shutdown corner,
No.
but he is an exceptional playmaker. 46.1 passer rating when targeted, and he's not grabby. That's another thing that's really impressive about Surtain. He might draw a few more penalties than Stingley, but he's not like a Joey Porter Jr. type where he's blanketing guys.
He's just blanketing guys so much and so often that the refs think it's
He must be holding
penalty.
them.
He must be holding on that. It's usually clean. He just gets penalized because he's too good. And the same thing, I feel like that's what happened with Stingley early on in his career because he got penalized a little bit more with that. That's not what happens with Sauce, by the way. That is not what happens with Sauce. I don't hate Sauce. I'm tired of the Sauce is better than Surtain agenda.
You could say you're lost in it.
Yeah, I mean, you know who isn't lost in the Sauce? AFC East wide receivers. Getting back to Derek Stingley, yeah, he's really damn good. There's a reason they picked him at 3.
He has become that player. He's lived up to that pick. 15.6 snaps per reception. One of the best marks in the league. He is essentially an island on the outside, and he's exactly what they have needed.
Exactly, and the island that applies to Surtain, but it also applies to Stingley. Maybe he hasn't been a shutdown because he does let stuff past him. Sometimes it's hard.
And shutdown is extremely rare.
Exactly.
That's like 1 to 2 guys a season at most.
Yeah, you never see this. Sauce played a really great season last year. He wasn't a shutdown. There's been maybe 5. Like Gilmore is the most recent shutdown since Surtain this season. And that was his defense player of the year 3 years ago. Really hard to be a shutdown. Stingley's getting close, though. I mean, he's not there, but he'll get beaten on occasion. But 44.6% catch rate, pretty cool.
He's got the athletic potential as well to keep developing and sustain. The ball skills. There's so little he can't do. He could absolutely sustain his success long term and maybe not become a Pat Surtain type of player, but become a true all-pro contender. Yeah. At least second team in the AFC.
And you don't have to be a Surtain type of player to be elite.
No, you don't. Now, who do you have number 3?
I think we have the same guy because I know you love him.
Christian Benford?
Yeah.
Yep. He has taken such a big step up this year.
He is so good. I mean, you want to talk about yards per target? Can I interest you in a number below 5? 4.8 yards per target for Christian Benford. That is the lowest by a pretty wide margin in the league. He's just so good. Talk about tight winner percentage, 25%.
he's so sticky, and that is exactly what the Bills need when you're contrasting with a guy like Rasul Douglas, being able to stick Benford on a team's top receiver and having a guy who is punching above what we expected from him. He's been a huge part of the Bills' defensive overperformance, and I'm really interested to see if he can keep it up for the next couple of years.
I am too, because it feels weird because I don't think anybody saw this coming from him out of Virginia Tech, and then he had that really good season last year, and we were like, okay, because the season before last, their guys left for corner. Are we running over time? Let's run through it really quick. All right, guys, we are on a little bit of a time crunch, so let's just let's hurry it up. It's been 3 hours. You're probably sick of hearing us talk anyway. Benford, he's incredible. Who's your nickel?
Marlon Humphrey.
Mine too. He's got 5 picks, second lowest quarterback rating when targeted. He's insane. He's had his lapses, but overall it's been a net positive in a defense that hasn't been elite.
To play devil's advocate, I know that Kenny Moore's an entirely different type of player. I know he's not a Marlowe that you stick on guys, but he's been good. Good tackler.
Yeah. I just don't love him in man coverage.
No, neither do I. All right, and lastly, we have the safeties. You get 0 special teams analysis. Kickers are not football players. My number 1 safety in the AFC is Kyle Hamilton. Extremely versatile, does everything well. I would hate to see what the Ravens secondary would look like if they didn't have Hamilton.
He's just so good, and the stats maybe aren't that great, but that's because he's taken the brunt of it, because he's really just the one out there trying the most. He's doing the best. He's taking the tough assignments, and he's also been great on pass rush, 11 pressures, 41 pass rushes, 2 sacks. He's only allowing an average separation of 3 yards per target, and for safety, it's real good. Hamilton's been great.
He reminds me of Brian Branch in that it always feels like he's playing a step ahead. I have to Sean Elliott as my number 2 safety.
He did not make it for me. The coverage, I thought that was just a little bit. I think his run defense is very impressive, but the coverage success is just schemed up. And
he's very much a classic strong safety type, but I didn't see a particularly strong contender beneath him. Who is your 2?
Brandon Jones from the Broncos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, he's been really good, and as a tackler in the run defense, he's been stout, and he's just been really hard to beat. And then on the safety, the back end, they've played a lot of when they've played quarters, he's been really good in zone. When they've played man, he's been able to erase tight ends. When Njoku, whenever he got free, Broncos 2 weeks ago, it was not on Brandon Jones. And whenever Brandon Jones, he's been injured for 2 games, and whenever he was out, you could feel the difference. Brandon Jones is my number 2 safety. My number 3 is not your number 3.
Tell me if I'm a hack here. It's Derwin James.
No, you're not a hack. Derwin's my number 4.
Early in the season, Derwin James is having a resurgence as far as his run defense went. He was playing a huge role in what the Chargers wanted to do there, but he's become much stickier in coverage. And did he get suspended this year again?
I don't know.
I'm going to assume that he did, but when he hasn't been suspended or hurt, he's been the player that we know and love from 2 to 3 years ago, not the slower, less effective version that we've seen more recently. I like seeing Derwin James keep it together. He's a really fun player when he's healthy and hot.
Yeah. So my number 3, Kalen Bullock.
It was my 4.
Yeah. Really? All right. Love to see it. Yeah, I mean, this was one of those that was really tough for me to decide between him and James, so I had to watch both of them. Also, Elijah Molden was on this list for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's had a real good season, but when you watch it, it's clear that some of that's Jesse Menner helping him out. But Kalen Bullock, minus 19% catch rate over expected. That's pretty cool. Yeah, he's been targeted 21 times, 9 catches allowed as the nearest defender. Now, there have been a few times where he's gotten beat and the quarterbacks missed him. There was 2 big touchdowns that Trevor Lawrence missed on him, where he just missed the throw. You know what I mean? But still, he's got a 38.1% ball hawk percentage. That means he's got a hand on the ball 38% of the time when he's targeted. Pretty damn good. Like 4 picks. But he's also he's been playing true free safety, single high. He's so rangy. He just gets everywhere. In zone, he's making the right decisions most of the time. In a safety group in the West it's deep, but not a lot of high-end talent, I thought he stood out the most.
All right, and that's going to do it on our Pro Bowl picks. Final episode probably going to come to about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Thank you, our hundreds of thousands of listeners, for sticking with us. And make sure you don't listen to whatever podcast is uploaded next, because they're kicking us out, and they hate football content.
Yeah, you know what? This is more important.
This is more important. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, stay hard.